doing your live stream?
We are about to start the live stream. So there's Dwayne, everyone. Dwayne says hi. Anyway, I'm just starting it now. I'm actually running a little bit late, but I couldn't ignore your call. So
Yes.
Can I talk to you after the stream?
I'm confused. It's Saturday. Absolutely. Talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye. Alrighty. Well, we should do a live stream. I realize it's the 4th of July, and here in America, people are celebrating their independence by not wearing a mask. All the things. Hello, Jamie. How are you? Hi, Shane. Hi, Tammy. So it is the 4th of July, and so yeah, here in the U.S., we celebrate Independence Day. I saw a funny meme last night. Did I save it? Because it was funny. Let me find it really quick. It said, oh, I guess I didn't. It said something about Happy Trader's Day, you ungrateful snobs. And I was talking about Americans pulling away from England. It made me laugh. So I'm running a little bit late because I was trying to organize my thoughts for today's presentation. The topic specifically is going to be about the Reef timeline from the beginning to, when should you turn things on. I want to talk about that. I felt like we haven't done that. And, we talk about lots of different things in these streams. And by the way, I do look and see, which streams are more popular than others. I like to see, what topics caught your eye, which ones reach the most people. And fascinatingly to me, the one about reef tank maturity, or, becoming mature as a reef keeper, or when is your tank mature, that topic alone was very popular. Somewhere around 50,000 people watched it, and it's a 3-hour video, and people tuned in and watched. And I'm just amazed because, I know that's a long video, and I know a lot of us, matter of fact, I occasionally have someone post to my channel and they say, please edit short videos. I don't have time for these long ones. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I understand. I'm busy. I'd love to do some edited content. I'm hoping to do some edited content. And let me kind of go into that before we get into our topic. I'm actually I'm a lot concerned about the future economy for the rest of 2020. I appreciate the business you guys throw me. Thank you very much. I'm not talking about that like for any other reason. I am just thinking things went really well the first 6 months, but I have a feeling it's just going to stop. This corona thing is just getting worse and worse here in our United States. I know a lot of you are international, so I'm just kind of telling you. And as it gets worse and worse, I think people are going to finally do what I expected months ago. I was sure that people were going to hunker down and save all their dollars so they can pay rent and buy food. And instead, people were buying things. And I'm like, wow, I did not see that coming. And I think this time, because we're basically going back into shutdown mode, it seems. I have a feeling this time people are going to be way more serious because maybe the money's going to dry up. Whatever savings they had dwindled. Whatever money they were getting for free from the government stops. Those that thought they'd go back to work, those companies are out of business. So I'm very concerned of what's going to happen the rest of the year. We'll just see. Hopefully I can keep eating until we hit 2021. That's my goal. I've been trying to be careful. I have bought inventory because I sell things, but I'm kind of at the point where I don't want to buy anything else at this point. I just want to ride it out and see how things go. And I hope for the same, for you, that you're doing something similar, that you're trying to be careful. I understand the desire to want new things. I get it. I want new things too. Matter of fact, I need something right now and I have no choice and have to spend money on it. It's a remodel here at the house. But it's going to have to happen because it's literally falling apart. And I was just like, oh, okay, no more procrastinating. This one must be tackled. Also, I bumped up the volume slightly on this episode, so please let me know if it seems loud enough this time so I know, so I can get it adjusted right for next week. It's not something I can fix on the fly. Obviously I can push a button or slide a slider, but the thing is, I need it to be consistent week after week, and so I try to do that. But, okay, so here is the thing we're going to talk about today. Let me look at some of your comments really fast. I don't want you guys to wait. If you're new to the stream and you've not been to one, the first 45 minutes to an hour I talk about a topic, and then I go into question and answer with the chat. And so a lot of people ask me questions in the chat and then think, why don't I answer? Why am I ignoring you? It's because I can't have a conversation and do a talk at the same time and share the information and stay on topic. I already digress as much as I do. So usually what happens is I tackle the topic, and you might catch my eye on something, but I stick to it, and then I go into the question and answer, and I look at the chat, and I look for anything that says at Milos Reef and your question, and I tackle those questions. So, if you're like, well, I asked and he hasn't answered me, I better post it again. I understand. I get it. I'm usually 20 minutes behind the chat. I just want you to know that's the MO of how this thing works. I think this is like live stream 137. We've had a lot of them, and it's been great getting to know more and more of you and interact with you on a regular basis. So I'm glad you guys continue to tune in and look for new topics. So what we're going to talk about today, oh yeah, I said I was going to look at the comments. See, I digress so easily. Let's see. Actually, I was surprised how many people were here because it is the 4th of July, and so I thought everyone's going to be busy. But we are in the middle of the day. A lot of people like to celebrate in the afternoon or the evening. So hopefully I'm not cutting into your fun time with family. I hope you're being safe. Maybe you can see the fireworks from afar and not in a crowded area. Jay said, I hope they let us off quarantine to celebrate our freedom. That's good. Dave asked the question, what is the biggest reefing mistake you made? I will talk about that later. I will try not to forget that. Andrea, feel free to remind me later. Is Eric here? Eric's here! Hey, Andrea. Eric and Andrea are both moderators from Club Milos Reef. Thank you, Ed, for letting me know the sound is good. Carl asked about removing hydroids, so I need to answer that later. And yeah, thanks for letting, several of you said the sound is good. That's awesome. One person is saying, come on, let's just buy all new lighting. All right, let's get into the topic. So when we're setting up a brand new tank, we're so excited and we want to buy all the things. And we want to get all the gear. We want to plug it all in. We want to wire it. We want a cable management. We want every tube to be in its perfect spot. We want to prepare for the absolute worst. We want to stop everything from going wrong before it ever can go wrong. And I think that's actually doing a big disservice to your reef tank. And so I want to talk about the reef timeline. I couldn't think of a better way to describe this, so I'm calling it that. If we come up with something better later, I'll probably grab onto that and use that as my phrase. But I think a reef timeline is a good, I hope it's a good label that people can say, oh yeah, I follow the reef timeline. Or, have you heard of it? And so here's how it goes. When we set up the tank initially, we may not even have everything we need. But what we really need is an aquarium. We need sand and rock and salt water. And we're going to need test kits. We're going to need to be able to measure salinity. We're probably going to need a heater, possibly a power head. It'd be good to have a power head. But even if you don't have the sump or all that gear hooked up yet, that's fine. You can start the reef tank now if you don't fill it up to the brim with water. So if you run the tank at, let's say, 75% full, so it doesn't have enough water to go over the drains and into a drain pipe, which would lead to a sump, or like maybe you're thinking canister filter, hang on back skimmer, none of that. Let's just start the cycle. The cycle is literally raising ammonia in the tank to rise so high that it collapses and converts to nitrite, and then that rises and collapses and converts to nitrate. And during that period, which could be 5 to 15 days to 30 days. I mean, some people even longer. But if it takes a while, that's fine. No filtration, no protein skimmers, no filter socks, no lighting, no lights whatsoever. Just set up the tank and let it ferment, for lack of a better word. We just want to let it go through the cycle. The one thing you can do constantly during the first month is clean the glass to see what's going on, what's going to go on? Nothing. You're not going to see anything magical jump out of your sand or off of your dry rock, I can tell you that. You're not going to suddenly see a worm like I would with live rock. But let's just stay with a dry tank. But clean the glass. Get in the habit of cleaning the glass. You're going to be doing that a lot for the life of this aquarium because it is the way you view it. Just like I wear glasses on my face, I have to clean them all the time or I can't see anything. And the same thing goes with our aquarium. So get in the habit of cleaning the glass. I do not want you to run a protein skimmer. I don't want you to break in a protein skimmer. I don't want you to run it without the cup. No skimmer. It's not even an option yet. You haven't even bought it yet. All you want to do is get the water cycling. So how do we cycle? There's different methods. I sell a kit now specifically for you guys with dry rock and dry sand. It's from Brightwell. It's a dry rock bacteria starter kit that has ammonia, and it has some kind of a bacteria that goes with the ammonia at a certain point, and it's basically going to cycle the tank in 8 days. But if you're going to do something different, like use a piece of raw shrimp, and I want to clarify this again because people are not listening to me on this one, the whole shrimp goes in your tank. The entire beast, as if it was ripped out of the ocean, died in your hand, and you put it in the aquarium. That's what I want you to do. The whole thing. Tail, legs, antenna, eyeballs, guts, brains, livers, kidneys, waste, I don't care. The whole thing, skeleton, the shell, all that goes in the tank. And you let it rot for 3 days. And then you take it out on the 4th day, and the cycle has commenced. But if you don't want to do that and you want to use the starter kit, I have that as well. You don't need to add any other bacterias. You don't have to do anything. You just let it cook. And then what I recommend you do is water tests every single day and chart it on a graph in Reef Trace, the app that I recommend. These are ways to watch your ammonia go up, 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 and then collapse. And then your nitrate's always 0, 0, 0, and your nitrate's always 0, 0, 0. And then suddenly you will measure and you'll see ammonia came down to 0, but nitrate is going up, 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 and you graph it. And it's a great way to learn how the cycle works. You're physically seeing it happen by testing each day. So you're testing your water, you've got a little circulation, no lights, no filtration, nothing. Then after this cycle has completed, which is probably going to be a month, you may start to see something in the tank that looks like brown stuff on the sand, and we refer to those as diatoms. Diatoms are actually a food for bacteria, and the bacteria came from the cycle. So when you put in that shrimp that rotted, or you poured in the liquid ammonia, it created bacteria in the tank as it went through the cycle. Now you have some biological bacteria in there, not unlike getting a petri dish with that, I think it's called agar, the gel that's in there, and just coughing on it once and then setting it aside, and a week from now you'll see all kinds of weird stuff growing on it. You just coughed some bacteria on it. With the cycle, you're throwing bacteria in there. In my case, the raw shrimp is loaded with bacteria, and it rots and breaks down, and then I remove the carcass, like I said, on day 4, but the bacteria stays in the tank and it spreads. It works its way across the sand, it works its way over the rock, it works its way up the glass. It's going everywhere. And as you clean the glass, you're knocking the bacteria back into the water column to land back on the sand or in the rockwork. So do that. Just let bacteria do its thing, and eventually you'll start to see some diatoms appear. And diatoms are food for the bacteria. You do not need to fear them. You do not need to get rid of them. They will fade away completely over the next 3 weeks or so. So that's month number 2. You're going to be dealing with diatoms. Your cycle is complete. You may say, okay, I want to try and put something in there and see if it lives. That is 100% normal. That is what you're supposed to do. So rather than going out and buying a bunch of corals, don't do that. I would recommend you get a single fish of some kind, hopefully not a damsel. We talked about this last week. And you put it in the tank. You go through acclimation. Now, okay, let me back up slightly. You want to put a fish in the tank, but you may say, but what about quarantine? So that's what I'm saying. Let's back up slightly back into month 1 or 6 weeks in. Might be smart to set up a quarantine tank, which is a small little 10-gallon tank near your main tank, and that's where you're going to put your brand new fish. If you're not going to do a quarantine tank, and some people absolutely refuse to, at the very least use Safety Stop, which is a product I sell on my website, and you acclimate the fish you bought at the fish store. You get it to match your tank water, which takes about 45 minutes. Then you put it through part A of Safety Stop for 45 minutes. Then you put it through part B of Safety Stop for 45 minutes. And now the external parasites are off the fish. You can now move it into your tank. And so the reason I was talking about quarantines and all that, we don't want to take your first fish and put it in the tank and it be covered in a disease that now anything else you add to the tank later could subsequently succumb to the same disease. So we want to, you had a clean tank. You put in clean, dry sand and dry rock because you're scared of every kind of pest. And then you put in a fish covered in pests. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that the fish is safe to put in your tank and will not bring a disease with it. So that way when you get another fish later on, you're not spreading the germs and the diseases to other fish throughout the system. And speaking of fish, really quick, I want to talk about this for a second. I ran into Humblefish, who is well known from Reef to Reef for helping people with fish disease. And he is now on Facebook, and I've got a link to his website, and he has his own forum on his own website. And super nice guy. We talked. He's based out of Florida. And I said, what is the book you go to? And so he told me, this one's my Bible. And so I added it to my shopping cart. It's expensive. It's like $147 for this fish disease book. But I thought if it's good enough for Humblefish, maybe I should get it and should read it and learn. Because you guys ask me so many fish disease questions, and I always say, I don't know. I'm not a fish disease guy. So I'm going to try to educate myself a little bit in that area. But okay, so we have our brand new tank. It has completed the cycle. We want to introduce a new fish, however you do this. Whether you quarantine in a tank, you go through safety stop and you put it in your tank. You know, at some point you're going to put that livestock in your tank and you want to observe and see how it does. And that fish will need to be fed. So at this point you're going to need to buy some kind of fish food. Could be flake food, could be pellet food. It could be something frozen you found at the fish store. And when I say fish store, that even includes places like Petco. They have frozen food too. So you can get the foods that you need, or you can actually make your own fish food if you're so desiring to do so. But if you're so brand new to the hobby, you're brand new in your timeline, maybe I'll just do with what's convenient and just either buy it online, or I sell all kinds of fish with my website. Or you can get things from Amazon, you can get things from a local fish store if you can go there. I mean, these are how we do it. So I'm just telling you, this is all happening in month number 2. We are introducing some kind of livestock into the tank to see how it does, and we're going to observe it. We're going to clean the glass. We're going to test the water frequently. During this month, you will be doing a water change. You will turn on the protein skimmer finally. You may even have purchased the light you're going to install over the tank, and you're now ready to run it, but necessarily too soon to run still. I said that sentence really weird, but it's probably too soon to run the light. You don't need it for a fish. You may like it for you, but you definitely don't need to light your tank for 8-10 hours a day with a fish in it. It's pointless. The room has light, so they can get by on what we could call dusk lighting, and then when you want to turn on the light for an hour or two, it's the evening, you want to enjoy your fish, you turn on the light for a couple of hours and you turn it off. Ideally, it should be plugged into a timer, not an on-off switch that you do yourself, because if you forget and you leave the lights running much too long, you'll in turn receive nuisance algae, which is just a pain in the butt. I would suggest that you have some kind of a timer of, even a mechanical timer that you can say go from here to here. That would be smart. And you can do some cool tricks with mechanical timers. Like you can set it, for example, let's say your window is 2 hours. You just want it on for 2 hours and you don't care what the time says on the mechanical timer. You just set it to turn off every 2 hours on the wheel. Okay, so all the off buttons are installed, and then when you put you switch the little button on the timer to turn on, the timer will move forward, and when it hits the next 2 hour mark, it just shuts off and the light's off again. And you don't have to remember to turn it off. And automating your tank is what we want to do at this point. The tank's been running for 2 months. At this point, I'd seriously recommend you start looking into an auto top-off system. I know, that sounds crazy. All we've got is a protein skimmer and an auto top-off. Those are the only 2 things you need right now. And you've got a little bit of livestock. Maybe a fish or a couple of fish. Maybe a couple of fish and a coral are in your tank. It's very, very pristine. It's very barren. There's not a lot going on. The protein skimmer doesn't have much to pull out. But you're feeding those fish. The fish are pooping in the water. They're increasing the amount of bacteria in the tank because the bacteria is eating that waste, and they're growing exponentially. So your bioload, or your bacteria, will adapt to the current bioload. And as you add more livestock, the bacteria grows even larger and larger and larger each time you add a little bit more livestock. And so that's why we don't want to add a lot at one time. We want to introduce it gradually. We're not adding any other additives to the tank at this point. Nothing. Your water changes are going to take care of whatever your tank needs. And it's the simplest and actually the most inexpensive way of handling it initially while we're in the early months. So let's say during that second month, everything goes well. The diatoms come. They're not quite gone yet. They're still irritating you, but it's not really that bad. And you realize that. And you're like, okay, I'm all right. And you clean your glass and you observe to make sure the fish stays healthy. You're doing water tests weekly to make sure that the water parameters are staying in check. You don't have ammonia rising. Your nitrate, you have zero nitrite. Your nitrates are staying wherever they are, but if you do a water change, they come down a little bit, which is completely normal, and that's good. You may even discover at one point that your tank has no nitrate and no phosphate. That's not great, but that's okay. We can deal with that for a little bit. But now as the tank is starting to mature into month number 3, there is a problem if you've already installed other gear, which I told you thus far, we didn't hook up anything. Protein skimmer, auto top off, that's it. Also, I should have said from the very beginning, and it wasn't on my list, so I forgot, I apologize. RODI should be your choice of water. You definitely want reverse osmosis water. We don't want to use tap water. It's not recommended. I know some of you can do it and have had great success, but it's not the standard. Most people don't have great success, so that's why we don't recommend it to the majority of people. We say get yourself an RODI system. That should be your big initial investment because you're going to use that for the life of your aquarium, and it's going to always be producing your water. Plus, on the side benefit is you get drinking water for free at home instead of buying bottled water, which costs a lot of money. So we've got, the tank is getting there, it's into month 3. So what would we put in the tank as the rocks are starting to turn green now? That's month 3, that's what happens. Well, your lights have been activating some algae inside the rock, it's growing some. The waste in the tank is fueling some algae. It's happening. Whether you like it or not, you're going to start to get algae. And like I said, the rock may just turn green. It may not grow anything furry or bubbly. It may just be green. You're like, well, that rock wasn't green when I bought it. What's wrong? What should I do? Leave it alone. That's totally normal. That's part of the ugly phase that happens around month 3, 4, and 5. So your rock turns green. Now would be a good time to start getting a cleanup crew. So we've got a protein skimmer, an auto top off, and we've got test kits, and we've got a cleanup crew. I haven't mentioned anything else yet. I haven't mentioned using microbacter. I haven't mentioned using biopellets. I haven't mentioned GFO. None of those things were needed in the first couple of months. I didn't mention refugium, did I? No, because it's too soon. There's not enough stuff in the tank for the refugium to do well. So there's no point setting that up yet. So our reef timeline is the basics of the basics. We're not dosing anything yet because the tank doesn't need alkaline and calcium. We're just letting water changes provide what the tank needs from the salt mix that you're purchasing and mixing with the water. And if you're not making your own salt water, you're buying salt water from the fish store. Again, you come home with those jugs. As you pour it in the tank, you are replenishing things that are being slowly utilized by the limited amount of livestock that's in the tank right now. You might, at this point, like I said, you just went to the fish store and you got a cleanup crew. And while you're there, like, oh my God, that frog spawn coral is so pretty. I want a frog spawn coral. So you get a coral and you add that to your tank now. So you've got a fish or two, you've probably got 2 or 3 corals, and you've got some hermit crabs, and you've got some snails, and you might have said, I want a starfish, and perhaps this urchin, and all is well in the world, and you're enjoying your tank. Well, you got to clean your glass. It's very important that you keep cleaning the glass because we want the tank to stay nice and pristine, like the first day you set it up and you were so excited and you're so proud of it. Don't let it get hazy, don't let it get dirty, don't let it obscure your view. Keep wiping things down because that is all part of the normal husbandry that we do to keep our tank happy. We want to keep topping off the tank. Oh, I know I'm saying a lot of stuff, but I'm trying to keep it basic for just general information. Obviously, there's a lot of extra details that we never want to omit or forget about. But we are topping off with fresh water, and we're doing water changes with salt water. So you're not going to top off with salt water. I just had to say that out loud once. I haven't said that in forever, so it's a just-in-case situation. Now we're into month 4. The tank definitely has some algae growing in it. It's starting to bother you. Your cleanup crew is doing okay, but you wish they would get rid of it all. You could add a little bit more cleanup crew. Maybe you didn't buy enough. My recommendation is 1 critter per gallon. So that's a lot of critters, and I know it, and it's not cheap, and I know it, but they're working 24 hours a day, or at least 12 hours a day. And so these guys are constantly at it where you're just looking at the tank for a few minutes at a time, but they're always at it. So they're really important, and if you don't have enough cows mowing down the fields, your fields are going to get really lush. So you need to have a big enough cleanup crew. So it might be time to buy more. And maybe it was so expensive you couldn't afford so many in month 3, so in month 4 you buy a few more. And now that the tank is growing some algae, and now that the tank is, kind of settling in, and the green rock is turning more to brown rock, again, totally normal, maybe about now is the time to hook up the refugium and put some macroalgae down in there and put a light over it. And you might want to run that light for about 9 hours a day. And you could even run that light late at night instead of during the daytime. So the tank is lit up during the daytime, and at night your refugium is lit, which helps kind of stabilize the pH in the late night hours. The thing that I want to also emphasize is in month number 4, we want to really dial in your light schedules because you've added some corals and the corals need light. And now we can't do it with just 2 hours a day. That's just not enough. So your corals are going to need more light than that, and they're going to need a decent light, and you're going to have to decide what light fixture you want to buy and what features you really appreciate, what controllability you have, whether you can do it with your phone or your computer or a little switch on the top or a knob. These are the things you want to figure out and maybe read some reviews. And then you find like, okay, this is the light. I love it. I got this one from Cobalt. It's amazing. And you set it up. Don't run it for 12 or 14 hours a day. Shrink that way down to maybe 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day, maybe. It doesn't have to be a full long day like everyone thinks. That's usually a big mistake because the longer day definitely is going to fuel the algae. So the shorter day gives the corals what they need, doesn't fuel the algae nearly as much. And then the refugium can start to do its job. The refugium area is an area within the sump, and that area there is, it could have been just running water all this time, nothing was in it, and now you introduce some live sand in there, a bag of live sand, you get yourself some macroalgae, either online or at the fish store, and you put a light over it, and now you have an active refugium. And this is an area that you want to do well so that the algae in the tank does not do well. That's the point of it. So that's why we do it. And then you're going to test more things than you were up till now. In the beginning when you were testing, you were probably testing the master test kit from API, which is going to be like water hardness and pH and ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate, and that's about it. But now we're going to be delving into, we got to measure the alkalinity, we got to measure the calcium, we got to measure the magnesium, we need to know phosphates, and these are going to be more test kits you got to buy. So you're probably going to buy these test kits around month 4, possibly month 5. I don't really see the point buying it in the early months because those numbers are going to be 0. And so you're just verifying that they're 0, which seems kind of redundant to me. So instead, like I said, use that money toward the auto top-off kit and let that make topping off simplify your life so it's one less thing you have to do because it's something your tank needs every single day, several times a day. And if it's doing it automatically and you just have to refill a jug every few days or once a week, that's just wonderful. And that's really part of making your husbandry easier for the aquarium. So in month 4 and in month 5, we're seeing the rock change from green to brown to reddish. And then hopefully somewhere around month 6, you'll start to see coralline appear on it. And that's completely normal. For it to show up earlier is more wishful thinking than reality. It does happen, but it's not something guaranteed. And again, a super long light period will actually reduce coralline growth instead of encourage it. So again, another reason not to run the light so long. So I want to go back to about month 4 though. Your tank has got the brown rock that's kind of hideous. You're not happy with it. There might be some stuff on the sand you're not liking. If your nitrate and your phosphate are zeroed out or bottomed out, this could lead to a thing called dinoflagellates. And dinoflagellates are very frustrating. They're stringy. They look like snot. They're on the sand. They're on the rock. They might be on the plastic plumbing parts inside the aquarium that squirt the water out, like the lock line fittings, or on bulkheads. I mean, whatever it is that shoots the water. It could even be on power heads. I mean, it can be everywhere. And it happens in these tanks that have 0 nitrate and 0 phosphate. So by having a kit where you can measure phosphate and measure nitrate accurately, now we're going to delve into more specific tests. And I'll even throw it out there. Hannah just came out with a brand new nitrate digital meter that measures 0 to 5. I mean, it's the lowest measurement I can imagine. And so if you're dealing with a tank that's always 0, maybe that's a good device for you. For someone like myself whose nitrates are always crazy high, I can't use it. But we want to have a little bit of nitrate in the tank. We want to have a little bit of phosphate. And that comes from having a bioload. It comes from having fish waste in the system, from feeding the tank a decent amount. And, it normally would come from live rock but you don't have any because you use dry rock. So you may actually need to dose nitrate and phosphate to add that to the water to bring up the numbers a little bit to avoid heading into the zone that leads to dinoflagellates, because you really are not going to want those. Dinoflagellates are so frustrating, and they're so pervasive these days. It's even worse in driving people out of the hobby. They are so fed up. They're just like, cannot get rid of this stuff. I've noticed over the last couple of years, a couple of different products are starting to work to fight it off. Microbacter Clean is one. Live Rock Enhance is another one that I've suggested, and several people said it did definitely help in reducing it. But those people also work to bring up their nitrate and phosphate in the tank a little bit to get it away from 0 ppm. So we want to look into possibly dosing that, and that's probably something you're going to want to dose manually, because not to scare you or make you feel like it's dangerous, if too much gets added to the tank accidentally, it can cause some damage, and you could lose the new livestock you've just recently put in the tank that was doing so well before you start dosing it. Specifically, I've heard this from several people, but at dosing nitrate, they put in a little bit, they put in a little bit, they put in a little bit, and I'm talking about each day. And the number stays, it's just barely coming up. It's like 0.0, or it's like 0.5 of a nitrate. I'm like, wow, that's still so low. And they're like, oh, I finally got up to 1. And so they're dosing, but they're not measuring as closely. Like, you should really be measuring pretty much daily. Do your dose, the next day measure. And if you keep doing this, you'll actually see where the numbers are going, and you won't get it, it won't run away from you. But if you are just dosing thinking, okay, well, I'll just measure once a week, but I'm going to put this in this amount, like let's say it's 3 milliliters a day, and you're putting that in each day. In the meantime, the number went 1, 2, 4, 8, 21, 58. And then you see your coral just do this, and it's just shrunk down and is miserable. You're like, what's going on? And so you pull out all your test kits, you're like, oh, my nitrates shot up. That's why the corals responded that way, because the nitrates shot up. So by dosing manually and then testing the next day and seeing where you're at, you can say, okay, I can taper off. I actually hit 5 already. I didn't expect that yet. And you can just stay at 5. And that's good. Somewhere under 5 for nitrate would be ideal. Somewhere around 0.03 to 0.1 phosphate would be good. Those are good areas. We like low, but we don't like 0. So we want to get some. And if you end up with more, it's okay. But that's the one thing you may want to dose at that point is nitrate and phosphate, because your tank's going to need it, so the diatoms fade away and the dinoflagellates don't take its place. It's really important. Now in month 4, you may run into something else, which is called cyanobacteria. And cyanobacteria is a photosynthetic bacteria that grows typically on the sand bed, but it can grow on the rock. And it's usually a red blanket, looks like velvet. And you could scoop it all together and just remove it from the tank, but it may just come back the next day. And so in that case, you may want to treat the tank for cyanobacteria. Others may say, oh, just increase your flow and kill your lights. Yes, there's a lot of things you can do, but you may want to just treat the tank. It's up to you on that one. But we don't want to go from diatoms to cyano to dinoflagellates. That's the important part, and that's why I want you to know that that's something can happen around month 4 and 5 and 6. So we are hoping to go from diatoms to it's just kind of got some hair algae growing, and our cleanup crew is taking care of it, and our refugium's starting to kick in, and our protein skimmer's pulling out waste every day, and that's all we're doing. There's no biopellets mentioned yet. There's no, I'm trying to think of all the gear that people hook up. There's no UV hooked up. There's no this, there's no that. We are just keeping it very, very simple. All that really cool gear that you're reading about in magazines or you're hearing about online or people saying you need this, I don't know that you need it yet. And you may need it at some point. But a lot of people that run like a successful tank and they say, well, here's all my gear. And I've got the Alcatronic here, and I've got the Trident here, I got the Reef bot going over here. Everything tests everything for me. I never have to lift a finger. My automatic water changes happen every single night while I'm sleeping. My top-off happens automatically. I even have my RO system babysitting itself with this new Arduino controller. Yes, that's all cool gear. We all love that stuff. But you may not need it initially. And so we don't hook up things until the tank needs it. And that's what I was saying at this point, month 4, you might need to start considering running GFO. But you wouldn't be running it from month 0, 1, 2, 3. It's absolutely useless because there is no phosphate in the tank. So there's nothing to pull out. In this month, you may be adding a little bit more livestock as well. And like I said, you may need to handle cyano situation. And that would be something where you could use red cyano RX, which is a treatment that takes 3 days to 5 days to remove it, and then it's gone. And if it comes back in 6 months or if it comes back in a year, so what? You just treat one more time. But there's no reason for you to live through it for weeks and months. I mean, people that tell me I've been looking at this red stuff in my sand for 9 months, I feel so bad for them because they shouldn't have to go through that. It just ruins your experience, and it doesn't need to be there. So, I don't know. What if you went to your yard and you have this beautiful lawn and the trees rain down all the leaves on your lawn? Just lots of leaves. You can't even see the lawn anymore. Would you basically just say, well, nature will take care of it if I increase flow, quote unquote. So if the wind comes and blows the leaves away, the lawn will be fine. Yeah, it's true if the wind finally comes and blows it all away, but it may not. But as long as those leaves sit there, it's ruining the view. So you go out there with a rake and you rake it all up and you put them in bags or in carts or boxes, whatever you do, and you put them and you mulch them, great. And it's gone and your yard looks beautiful. It's the same principle. We just want to treat for cyanobacteria, get rid of it, move on with our lives, and keep water testing. The water testing should be a very important part of your reef keeping career because it is what tells you what's going on with the tank. And those test kits are so important. I mean, mine are right here in plain sight every single day of my life. And I used them last night. I am always using test kits, and for them to be put away, out of sight, dusty, expired is a terrible thing because they are your tools of success. So you want to definitely know what's going on. All right. In month number 5, you may decide it's time to change your aquascape slightly. You may just realize, it's the way it's laid out, you're not really loving it, or you don't have enough space to plant the corals that you're trying to buy, or you're seeing something is growing onto something and you're thinking, well, I wish that wasn't happening. So by rearranging and getting your rock work to look a little bit more nicer may be nice. It might be the good time to do that. And at that point, you'll also be noticing that the rock may be losing all the weird uglies and starting to look like normal, almost live rock, which is what we want. We want to have that normal rock that looks like it came out of the ocean. And that will happen in time. It takes a long time. It could take 9 or 10 months, but at 5 months, you might start to see some hints of it, and you might see some really cool things starting to grow off the rock. And that's a good thing. You want that to happen. You may need to look at readjusting the flow in the tank now. Now that you've changed some of the rock work, you've got some corals growing, and you might say, it'd be really great if I added one more power head back there, or if I move this nozzle down a little bit, and you kind of fine-tune things because you have something to look at. Where in the beginning when you set it up, when the tank was empty, and you just put a couple things there was nothing to move, so you couldn't tell if that was really the ideal spot for the power head. You might have a gyre, you might have a Vortec, you might have a Nero 5, you might have a J-bow, you might have a Wave, all these different pumps, but without something moving in the tank, it's really hard to tell if you've got it right. So, like I said, around month 5, you've got some corals in there, you're watching the fish, and you might say, if I move that over 1 inch, and if I bring this down slightly, and if I put a new thing back in the back blowing forward, you might see some really good improvement in the tank, and you might see some things taking off. You also, at this point, would want to look at your lighting schedule one more time to see if there's any more adjustments you need to make. You should be checking on the refugium to see if the plants are growing. And if they're not, if they're just stagnant, something's not right in your system. It might have been too soon for the refugium after all. You might need to dose iron. That's a possibility. So these are some things that you're going to be thinking about during month 5. And of course, keep cleaning that glass. So now we're 6 months in. We've got, 6 fish in there, and we've got 15 corals, and we've got some fun little hermit crabs. You found a Halloween hermit crab you couldn't live without because it's so colorful and gorgeous, and you're just like, I love that thing, it's my favorite, I named him Ted. That's fine. That's the fun part of the hobby. We don't need to struggle all the time. We should be able to enjoy our tanks. So in this month here, now would be when you start to see coralline appearing. It may appear on the lock line, it might appear on a cleaning magnet, it might appear on, God forbid, a frag rack. Why do you have frag racks in your brand new tank? Yeah, don't do that. You might see it on the rock work, you might see it on some PVC plumbing, you might see it on the overflow box. So that's good. And if you scrape it off, you'll send the seeds into the reef to land on the rock where you hope the coralline will take hold and grow. This is a good time to start cleaning all your pumps. So if you have a pump on the protein skimmer, remove it and clean it. If you have a return pump, take it apart and clean it, inspect it, make sure it's all as well. Make sure you have a second one in case it fails. In other words, a backup waiting to go on the shelf that you can just pull out and install. Any in-tank power heads should be cleaned, especially because they are the place where algae grows the most because there's all that light, there's good flow, and usually the cleanup crew can't reach it because of where it's located. So you should definitely clean your pumps because as the pump gets more and more dirty, it's actually reducing the amount of flow in the tank. So you bought this great power head that puts out this amazing amount of flow, and then you let it get encrusted with algae and get all clogged up and get all slimed over, and it's running at like 50% efficiency or 70% efficiency, and you're losing 30%, and yet you're still paying the same amount of electricity. So why not keep it nice and clean so you get the maximum flow, so you can actually look at it from a distance and see that it's running right, so you can make sure the propeller is actually spinning because you can see it. You know, these are things we want to do. So the 6-month mark is a good time to do some general maintenance cleanup. Then around month 9, the tank should have matured. That's where we talked about the maturity video at the beginning of the stream. And that was more so the tank was getting mature, but you as a hobbyist are getting mature as well. You're recognizing things now much more quickly. You can hear the sound of water dropping and know what that means. You can glance at something and tell the temperature from a distance. You can glance over and the light should not be on, and you know this. Why is that happening? So, you know, you and the tank are now in sync, and you are working together as a team. You're staying on top of testing, just like a mechanic tests your car to make sure everything's working right, so that way when you're on the road, you're safe. You want the reef tank to stay safe at all times, and so you are making sure that everything's good through regular, frequent water testing, through doing water changes. And now you've got enough livestock in the tank that water changes aren't cutting it with maintaining alkalinity and calcium. And you're thinking, man, I guess I need to dose something. So now would probably be a good time to start thinking about hooking up dosing pumps. If you haven't done dosing pumps yet by this point, but you already were dosing manually because you were pouring it in by hand each day because you didn't want to spend the money, you already know how much to put in, which is great. You know, so I kind of jumped around there a little bit, but if you were already dosing at month 6, let's say at 6 months you said, okay, I need to start dosing alkaline and calcium. I'm just doing it, and my corals love it. That's good. That's a good thing to do. And so you've learned your tank needs this amount of alkalinity, it needs this amount of calcium, and then around month 9, you're like, okay, I'm really tired of pouring this in myself. I want a dosing pump. You can tell the dosing pump those numbers you were putting in by hand because you know them. That's what I was saying. So if you used 15 of this and 21 of that, you can tell the dosing pump 15 of this. And you tell dosing pump number 2, 21 of that. And then you just make sure it does that job. And you test the water to make sure that the numbers are accurate. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for consistency in these numbers and that they stay. And like my reef tank, it's always growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. It consumes more and more. And recently I had a alkalinity drop of 1 DKH. It was very quick. It happened in a matter of days. And I lost a big section of the Shadowcaster acro. It's very annoying. And one of the starfish, I have a picture. I didn't share it because I'm mad about the coral dying. But there's a red starfish in my reef, and he put his one arm straight up, and it's a long arm. And he stretched it all the way up, and he put his little tip of his arm over the branch to like hug it, like, it's okay, buddy. I understand. You're going to be okay. I was like, aw, he cares about his friend. You know, I was like, ah. So anyway, I'm going to have to go in there and cut out a big, giant section of dead acro. And, you know, it's disappointing. But it's because so much stuff is growing, it's using more than what the system was set for. That's why we have to adjust our dosings to increase slightly to basically stay stable. We don't want to increase just, well, it's been 9 months, it's time to bump everything up 10%. That's not how it works. You do it based on consumption, and then you observe and you test, and you try to keep staying in your sweet spot with your numbers. And that's part of being mature yourself as a reef hobbyist. And then I would say around month 9, you want to clean out your sump. So if you haven't done that yet, the vacuum attachment that fits on a MaxiJet is awesome. I love that thing. I use it several times a year. And it's a great way to siphon out all the stuff that gathers down there, kind of get it nice and clean, wipe it down, make sure you can see everything, you know, make sure the heaters are all in good shape. You know, just check gear overall. Having a clean sump lets you do that. Having a dirty sump does not. And then we finally come up to month number 12. You know what that means? It's been a year. We celebrate. What do? We buy a new fish. We get some more coral. We are super happy. And we clean our protein skimmer from top to bottom. So now we take the entire protein skimmer out and we scrub it in like citric acid and we want to get the thing completely clean and pristine and new and hook it back up. And that way it's doing its best job, because it's been running for 9-10 months now, and we want to make sure it's in good shape and that the pump is doing well and that everything's operating properly and that there's no salt turning to stone in the venturi intake where it sucks in the air. So it's important to clean that kind of gear. You could wait a little bit longer. I would say probably around month 15 or so is when you're going to start cleaning pumps, like return pumps, skimmer pumps, what other pumps, reactor pumps. These things that we neglect and think rarely about, they need to be taken out and cleaned from time to time. And then, again, month 15, it might be time to start trimming back on some corals. Especially if they're soft corals, they tend to grow aggressively and they really spread. It might be time to go in there and actually go in there and clean things up, kind of bonsai your tank down to where it belongs to rein it in and kind of make it look right. And you'll feel better about it. You'll also want to remove anything that died, because that just looks ugly. All right, month 18. So we're a year and a half in. I would say we want to clean our protein skimmer again. We want to clean our pumps again, because now the pumps are aging. And they may last you many years, but if you're not cleaning them, they're not moving the water like they originally did, like I said earlier with the power heads. But that also goes for your return pump. It goes for any kind of manifold pump, closed loop pump, like I said, skimmers. These are the things that we do. A turf scrubber pump. Anything that's feeding anything needs to be cleaned. And then when you finally hit 2 years, month 24, you celebrate again because you've done a great job. And at this point, your tank should be looking really good. You should see coralline in lots of places. Your corals should be filling in nicely. Your fish are fat and happy. Your water parameters are stable. You've got all the right gear. And at this point, you might say, oh, I really want to run ozone, or oh, I really love the idea of biopellets. Oh, I really love, ceramic media. That's when you start doing these other things. I feel like a lot of hobbyists initially are putting those things in their tank right from the beginning, when their tank doesn't even need any of that stuff, and it's overcomplicating everything. And if anything, I feel like maybe all that extra equipment is leading us right into the dinoflagellate thing I was mentioning around month 4, because that happens to so many people in the first year. It's just so frustrating, it's so ugly, and it's so difficult to eradicate. And so we want to kind of avoid it by using the right gear at the right time. So that was the whole topic for today. So now let me get into all your questions. And if you have more questions about what we just talked about or that I omitted to talk about, feel free to ask now. I really appreciate your listening for as long as you did. 237 of you. Wow. All right, let me scroll up. So again, if you ask questions, hopefully you put Admilos Reef so I can find it. And there's 2 people that asked me to answer some questions too. And I said I wanted to be reminded what those were. Okay. Dave asked me earlier, what is the biggest reef? I'll put it on the screen. There you are, Dave. That's right there. By the way, I wore the shirt today because of the peppermint angelfish. No other reason. Dave says, what is the biggest reefing mistake you've made? The worst mistake I ever made was that I turned off all the pumps in my tank and went to sleep when I was meaning to feed a coral that I forgot I was going to do. I just literally forgot what I was doing and went to bed. I would compare that. I mean, that was terrible because I lost a lot of fish. But I would compare that mistake to how people will turn on the RODI system and then they see something on the TV screen, their wife calls them into the room, their kid needs some help with the homework, whatever, and they forget they ever turned it on until there's a flood in the house. I mean, that's a big mistake too. But worst mistake was losing fish that I'd had for many years that were beautiful and healthy, nothing wrong with them, and they all died because of me, and I was really mad at myself, and it was a really hard hit. And it took me a while to kind of forgive myself, which even now it still makes me mad. So I guess I didn't really forgive myself, did I? All right. Okay, Carl had asked me, what's the best way to get rid of hydroids? My normal reaction would be to scrape them off. And that is, you go in with a dental tool and you scrape them off, or a screwdriver, or you get under the stone with like bone cutters and cut away underneath. I know there are some nudibranchs out there that eat hydroids, but finding one would be impossible because we only recently found out that there even is one. There's one in my Critter ID section of my website that a friend of mine, he had this thing, he got it from the ocean, and he watched it eat hydroids and goes, I had no idea. this thing eats hydroids. Like, oh man, you got to breed those things. Everyone's going to want them. But yeah, hydroids, I mean, you know, they're opportunistic filter feeders, and you may see some in your tank, and it's no big deal. But if they're growing out of control and you're getting them everywhere, then it's a big deal. And so my approach is usually just scrape them off. Another thing you might want to use if it's convenient, or or if it's ideal, I should say, if it's ideal, and you could put F-Aptasia on top of it, which is that stuff from Frank's Tanks. I sell it on my website, and it puts like a white, like a snow cap on top of whatever you're trying to kill. And it's designed for Aptasia. People are using it for Mahanos. People are using it for other things too. And if it lands on corals, it kills them. So I think if you were to put that over hydroids, then after 3 days you could chip that white stuff off. You might find the hydroids are completely gone. Just cooked away. I say cooked. I don't know why I said that, but I mean they're just gone. So you might try that. That might work. All right. Scroll down. Let's see. Looking for your questions. You guys are talking a lot. Hey, Reef Keeper, he said at the end, he's such a dope. I'm not putting this on the screen because of that. He said, I have the HANA URL phosphorus checker, and I've been driving myself crazy lately with high phosphates. I discovered today I have the wrong reagents. That is not being dumb. That happens to all of us. I recently was measuring my phosphate, and my vial was super crazy dark blue, which it shouldn't be. It's supposed to be clear. I'm like, God, it's blue. And I don't know what made me think of it, but finally I realized, or I asked myself, did I put in 10 milliliters of water in my mixing vial, or did I put 5? Have I been putting in 5 lately? Because it's a habit, because I use that for alkalinity. And if so, so once I measured with 10, it wasn't nearly as blue. I was like, oh, how do you forget these things? So my friend Joe, he has a technique that's pretty smart. So here's a test kit. This one is the calcium test kit from Elos, and you can see I put the expiration date on there. One of the things that he does inside his test kits is whatever the instructions are, he'll get a Sharpie. Instead of pulling out the manual or opening up the sheet or whatever, he writes on there 3 drops, 1 scoop, shake 1 minute. And it's like his crib notes on the test kit itself. And that's actually a good idea because we do forget things or we grab the wrong thing. I think I told you guys at one point, about a month ago, something wasn't measuring correctly, and what had happened was one bottle from one test kit ended up in the other kit entirely. And it's a wonder I got any kind of result because it was like something from the magnesium kit was in my alkalinity test, for example. It made no sense at all. And I was looking at the bottle going, why? Oh, that's weird. How did that happen? Because I usually do one test and put it away, next test, put it away. That's how I do it. And somehow I cross-pollinated the bottles. So it happens. So yeah, you want to make sure that when you're running any kind of equipment that you've got the right reagent, the right bottles, set up, and the right measurements, because we do kind of make dumb mistakes. Let's see. Juice and Lee says, I love the 2 tanks in the background. He's been going at this for a long time. Yeah, these tanks are coming up in a couple more months on 7 years old. And there's a really great video of both tanks that was posted, I think, January 1st of this year. It's probably the only edited video I did this year where I gave a full tour of both tanks. So if you want to check those out on this channel, you definitely can. That's assuming you're still here in the chat and you were here long enough to hear me say that. Okay. K-Dub Coral says, can you cover bacterial blooms? Thanks. Yes, sometimes in our tanks we will see what looks like cloudy water, or it could even be green, like glow-in-the-dark green, just crazy, like the tank turned to phytoplankton. And that is almost always referred to as a bacterial bloom. And this can happen if we overdose bacteria, or conditions were just perfect for it to just happen on its own naturally. Just something in your system let it occur. and boom, you have this giant cloud that takes a while to dissipate. And in that scenario, usually the easiest approach is to hook up a UV temporarily for a few days, because everything that passes over the UV bulb will die. So any bacteria blooming will pass through this light and it'll dissipate and get, there'll be less and less of it as it is being eradicated from the system. But then once you're done, I don't feel the need for the UV to keep being run. I've dealt with bacterial blooms a few times in my tanks over the years, maybe 3 times, I guess. And I've never owned a UV. I didn't do it. I just waited it out, and eventually it just took care of itself. Because what happens is it's blooming, or maybe we could say it's booming because there's so much, but then it finally burns out because whatever it's really fueling on or feeding on, it devours it until there's none left, and it starves itself out and it dissipates. So rather than saying, oh, I got to do this massive water change, or oh, I got to protein skimmer it to death, or oh, I got to do the, it can fade away, but if you don't want to wait, or if it's taking too long, a UV sterilizer is usually the best approach to handling a bacterial bloom. It can also happen from dosing something incorrectly, such as vodka, vinegar, sugar dosing. These things oftentimes can lead to bacterial blooms. Alfredo says, since corals love ammonia, I haven't heard that. Is there any reason to put corals in on day 1? No, I can't think of any reason to put corals in on day 1. And I've not heard that corals like ammonia at all. Where'd you hear that? 007 says, I made it to the live stream. I know you said love stream, but you mean live stream. How are your skunkfish, clownfish behaving? They're doing well. So all 11 are still in the tank. They kind of spread out throughout the day, and then they get into the anemone for the night. But during the day, there's little skirmishes. I've had them now, I think, coming up on 5 years. That sounds right. And all of them are still in there, which is really cool. I posted a picture, I don't know, about a week ago or so, where I took a picture and I looked like, wow, I can count all 11, which never happens. And so that was fun. I shared it to Instagram. Marky Mark says, does nitrifying bacteria live in my brute container, the one that's holding the saltwater mixing station? Would that be helpful, or does it decrease over the quality of the water? I wouldn't put anything in your salt water. So if you're making new salt water to do a water change, it should just be what's in the salt mix, plus whatever you had to add to correct alkalinity or calcium or magnesium, because your brand of salt is deficient in something. In that situation, you're going to want to add a little bit more alkalinity, or you need to add a little bit more magnesium because they just don't pack enough in it. But I don't put anything else in. I don't add anything. I don't put food in it. I don't put bacteria in it. I don't put kalkwasser in it. I don't put prodibio in it. I mean, nothing goes in it. I just go with the salt mix itself, and I make the water. And then when it's time to actually do the water change, which I did one last week, and I did one the week before, which is crazy. I've done 2 in 1 month. The only thing I've added is baked baking soda, which is soda ash. And that was to bring the alkalinity up where it belonged, so they've matched my tank. But we don't put anything else in. You don't want things growing in your saltwater mixing station. You want nice, clean salt water. And if you ever have taken the time to notice at the fish store, those giant vats full of salt water and fresh water, a lot of times they look really, really gross. I mean, especially the salt, it might look completely brown. And you're just like, wow, when did you clean that thing last? And that's usually just because they're so busy, they just can't take the thing out. Frank's tanks, he has small enough ones out that he can take it out the front door. He brings it to the car wash, I don't know how often, but every so often, and he blasts it completely clean and brings it back to his store so he has a nice, clean saltwater mixing container. And then he's got a huge freshwater holding vat that I don't think he can get out of the building. It's ginormous. So, but we want to have clean containers, so I wouldn't put any kind of bacteria in there whatsoever. Nitrox says, can you put, regarding safety stop, can you just put 1 fish through it, or can you put multiple? So safety stop is mixed with a gallon of water, and so you can have several fish in there. Like if they're little fish, let's say they're a firefish, you can have a bunch of them in there, or it could be chromis, or it could be some clownfish because it's a gallon. But if you had bigger fish, like let's say you had 4 tangs, you might want to double the volume to 2 gallons, so you'd use 2 packages of safety stop to keep the right strength at double the water volume. And then yes, you can have all the fish go through that, and you can, if you can maintain the temperature, which would be like using a very, very small heater because it's only a couple of gallons of water. But I found some at Petco that you could plug in. They don't even have a thermostat, but they'll just keep the water from getting too cold. But you can actually use safety stop for several hours. You could put fish through it, and then more fish through it, and then more fish through it if you needed. And then after about 5 hours or so, it'd be time to change it out, or stop. But yeah, you don't have to do it one fish per packet. That's the nice thing about it. The One, great name, says, I'm starting a new display tank. I'm thinking on the best lighting for an SPS acro for growth and color. What do you recommend? Well, the Radions are very popular, so I recommend that one. Kessel just came out with a brand new light that's actually going out the middle of this month that you might want to look into. It's replacing the AP700. I can't remember the code of what it's called now, but that one's a very nice light. You didn't say what size display tank you're setting up, so I can't really, zone in on how many of what you need. But I think LED lights are very popular because you get to choose all the different color spectrums throughout the day. You can ramp it up, you can ramp it down. I'm a metal halides guy, so I'm running lights that are on and off. And I've been doing that for so long, and I just have no desire to change it out. I really like it. But over the Anemone Cube, I've got the Radion Gen 4, and I have the XHO add-on kit to really make that tank pop, and it looks great. Marky Mark says, how many hours or days should we prepare salt mix prior to use? This is one of those topics that gets a lot of debate. For myself, I always like to mix salt water for at least 24 hours. But there's some people out there that want to mix it and 20 minutes later they're using it. And I just like to let it go. Just let it mix completely. I have a huge power head in there of some kind, or like for example, I have this, just happen to have this by me. This is a giant Tunzi power head from back in the day called the Tunzi Turbell. And this is a little thing that would hold on. I used a zip tie to hold it onto this thing, and this is to a magnet, and the magnet goes on my barrel, and it just blasts the water in there, and it probably moves 3,000 gallons an hour. So this is for mixing salt water in a 55-gallon barrel. And yeah, here's the magnet I use. And in my big saltwater vat that's behind my aquarium, that uses a Vectra pump as a circulation pump, where it's just tumbling the water 24 hours a day, forever, until the container's empty, which is almost never. And I like to let water run. I mean, just like we have salt water in our aquariums that run all the time, having salt water in a barrel running with movement at all times, it's theoretically good indefinitely. I mean, obviously, you're not going to say, well, it's 9 years old, I'm going to finally use it. You wouldn't do that. But I have definitely used salt water that I mixed up months later. All I did was make sure the temperature, alkalinity, and salinity were the same. And if they weren't, like I said, I buffered it up slightly to bring the alkalinity up, and I used it in my tank. And salt water can be used, I'd like to say wait a day. That's my recommendation. Like I said, some people want to go a little quicker. They just like mix it, it looks clear, I'm using it right now, and they do. And like I said, it gets debated pretty heavily. But I think a day is good. It also, if you wanted, a lot of people don't do this, but you could. When you're mixing salt water, you could also add an air pump up high, so it can't reverse siphon, and run a heavy air stone down at the bottom to oxygenate the water, to aerate the water as well. Not to mix it, but just to kind of get the pH up even higher in the barrel before you do the water change. But like I said, a lot of people don't do that, but you could. Smoking Reefer says, what is the lighting schedule on your sump? Well, the only thing that has a light specifically is the refugium. And that light is on for about 9 hours a day. And I've been having it on during the daytime for no good reason. I really should switch it to night. But then again, I really enjoy the darkness of my home when I'm watching something on television late at night. So, I don't know. I foresee myself putting up woodwork around this tank finally, which I haven't done in all these years. It would be a great thing to do for the 7-year anniversary. But if I had the woodwork on there, then I wouldn't see the light. Maybe I would switch it to nighttime schedule, because the reverse schedule makes total sense. And in the past, I used to do that. But at some point a while back, I had a clownfish in there. And when my tank sitter came over, that light would not be on. That clownfish would technically be asleep and it wouldn't get any food, and I needed him to feed it. And so I switched the light schedule to that, and I've just never switched it back. So yeah, the turf scrubber has a couple lights built into it. It's technically over the sump, so that's still kind of part of your question. And those are lit from midnight 30 to lunchtime 30 each day for 12 hours a day. And then I have a strip of LED lights over it that I literally have a button I turn on or off if I'm working in the sump and I just kind of want to see a little bit better what I'm looking at. So but that's never on a timer. It's not a schedule thing at all. Macy's Daddy says, what's your thought on automatic RODI back flush valves? I only filter the water once a week, but what if it was daily? Okay, so again, we talked about earlier about automation and what makes your life easier. All I've been recommending for the longest time, I mean, probably since I got my own RODI system and saw it in action, was that we burn off the first 90 seconds of water before you make DI water. So you turn on the system, but you don't let water go through the DI. You actually branch off before the DI into a, let's call it not a waste line, it's really the drinking line. It's the RO line, because it's water that went through the sediment, the carbon, the membrane, that's drinking water. And then that would feed to the DI, which is separate. So if you branch off before the DI for 90 seconds and just throw that water away, which is about this much in a drinking glass, it's not a lot of water. What is that, 4 ounces? I don't know. You just burn that off. That gets the TDS creep that wicked out of the membrane while the system sat dormant for a few hours, a few days, or a week. Literally, if you turn off your RO system and wait 3 hours and turn it on again and measure the water coming out with a meter where you can see the numbers change, you'll see that number shoot up really high. I have 2 videos on this channel about TDS creep that you could watch, and they're really brief, they're like 2 minutes. And it's really important to bleed that off. But to just tell the machine to automatically purge the membrane, I don't really see the upside because, like I said, a few hours later, you open the valve, even though it purged at 9 a.m. this morning, for example, and now it's 5 p.m., we're like, I want to make some water. So it purged, great. Now you make water, and if you were running a meter and measuring as it's coming out, you would see the number shoot way up and then come down during the first 90 seconds. So I would just say, just purge it when you're about to make water, and then do it. And if your RO system comes with one of those valves, which is called a bypass valve, that's a 15-second purge. That's not even a 90-second because it flushes the water through so quickly because it's all the wastewater and the good water all going out at once through the waistline. It's bypassing the flow restrictor. And so you're pushing out so much water so quickly where my system, where you're doing it off the RO line, you're only draining off the RO water that's got TDS creep, but the wastewater is still going down the waistline. So you see, it's going there, and this is going here, and this is what you observe come out, but more went down the drain. But if you do the purge with opening a ball valve on the bypass, that's a 15-second thing, and it's so important that you don't forget that you're doing that. You literally open the valve, you turn on the system, and you count to 15, and you close the valve. And that is what you're supposed to do, and then you can start making water. So there's a couple of ways, but I know, unfortunately, sometimes people make the mistake. They open that valve, they totally forget, and then they start making water, and it's like 2 weeks later they realize that valve is still open. And really what it did was it wrecked the membrane. I mean, that's what happens. That's the physical downside. It actually damages the membrane. So we want to make sure that we're using the bypass valve correctly. So it's a 15-second run, and then you close it. The automation thing, I don't think most of us need it, honestly. I think if you can just open your valve for 90 seconds and collect a little bit of RO water, then close that line and open the DI line and make tank water, I mean, that's what I've been doing for 18 years, and it's such a simple thing to do. I just don't see why I would do it any differently. And I kind of answered Steve Minns at the same time with my whole reply. Yay! I caught 2 of you with the same comment. Smokin' Reefer says, I've used Live Rock Enhance. I'm struggling to produce coralline. I have plenty of growth from my SPS. My rocks are green in daylight. Should I try and scrub them with a toothbrush? No. The scrubbing the toothbrush to make the green go away, like scrubbing mold off of your bathroom tile, that's not a solution. And a lot of times you're just making your life more difficult because you're exposing your rock to air. You're scrubbing and you're aerosolizing all that crap you could get in your lungs. I don't recommend ever scrubbing rock, period, ever whatsoever. So if you're trying to grow coralline and you're not getting it, you may not have all of your parameters in the sweet spot. You need everything within the target range for it to start to happen, and then it will happen naturally. But you can also add things to grow coralline. Purple Up has been around forever by Carib Sea, and you can pour that in the tank. It's basically a aragonite milk that has probably a lot of magnesium in it, and maybe iodine and a few other things. And that magical elixir will definitely increase the potential for coralline growth to happen in your tank. Jamie says, I've considered getting an RO unit, but it doesn't have the DI part. Will it be okay, or is the DI part essential? Yes, well, an RO is still way better than nothing at all. Okay, so tap water bad, RO water good, DI water great. And you can add the DI to the RO system if it doesn't come with it. I actually sell the DI as a separate add-on. But if you're like international and it's too expensive to ship over there, at least running RO water would definitely be beneficial to your tank, because it's pulling. Let's say you get a RO system with a 98% rejection rate, and let's just say your TDS coming out of the faucet is 200. That means the TDS coming out of the RO is 4 on a good day. And putting in water with 4 TDS instead of tap 200 is a great thing. And then, like I said, the DI would polish off the last of those 4 and they'd be 0, which would be nice. But if you can't do it, then you can't do it. It's okay. Oh, this is a great question. George says, can you prolong shelf life of refrigerated foods by freezing them? Like the Reef Nutrition Mysis or Arctopods. They only last 2 months in the fridge. 2 months in the fridge. I would ask them what they say. I have a feeling you can't. My guess is that if you freeze it, that it's going to rupture cells in the membranes, within the foods themselves. And then when you thaw them out, they're not going to be in great condition. I mean, you can buy frozen foods that have, mysis in them. Or arctopods, well, I mean, we used to buy cyclopes, and that was pods, and they were frozen. So those are flash frozen. This is something different. I would say use up what you're buying within the 2-month span. You can feed your fish quite a bit. You could do multiple small feedings a day and kind of go through it. But what you could do is talk to Reef Nutrition directly, send them a message through their Instagram, through their Facebook, to their official website, and just see what they recommend. But I have not heard of anyone freezing it. I think they keep it cold. I do realize there's an expiration date. I do know some of us have used it after the date because we hate to waste money. And we would just do it and kind of hold our breath and hope nothing dies. But yeah. I actually want to get myself a nice big batch of arctopods so I can just squirt those in my tank every day. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. Jamie says, this topic was a really good one. I saw a guy today who was leaving the hobby after a year of having a tank with just water, no livestock, and every issue you can imagine, and decided it wasn't worth it. Yeah. We want to avoid that, not depression, but that inability to succeed. We want to be successful, and we just need to know how to do things. And I think, unfortunately, because we have access to so many products, that we throw everything at it. We add every piece of gear that they sell, thinking that's going to solve it. And a lot of times, stop running all those extra pieces of gear is the solution to fixing the tank, a lot of times. We just have to do that. All right, let me go to the next question. How are we doing on time? All right. I'm going to, since I have a walking mic, I'm going to throw this in the microwave. I never do that. I just drink it cold. Might as well spoil myself since I work from home. All right, next question. Aftershock says, I'm upgrading my tank from a 132-gallon tank to a 440. Oh, you're trying to be bigger than mine. I'm done. Someone ban this guy. All right, I'm kidding. Is it necessary to rehome my mandarin? I've had it for many years, and he does not eat frozen. Or will there be enough pods on the rock? Well, yes. There should be enough pods on the rock if you're using live rock. If you're going to set up the 440 with a bunch of dry rock, there's nothing there for the mandarin. You can buy lots more pods. You could go crazy and really invest. Like, different companies, like we just talked about Reef Nutrition, they sell live pods you can pour in the ticker pods. And then Algae Barn sells bags of pods. Pod My Reef sells pods. You can just dump in tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of pods to make sure the mandarin's getting food. It's unfortunate that you've had this mandarin for this long and it's not eating any other foods. Have you tried the Mandarin Diner yet, which is a technique I featured on this channel a long time ago? I took an olive jar, and I made an acrylic handle, but you don't need that. You can just take your arm and put it in the tank. And you can put the food in the olive jar and set the olive jar exactly in the path where the mandarin loves to swim. You know its routine. You know where it tends to go. And you set it where it's completely level with the sand. So when that mandarin is gliding along, it just keeps gliding right in and gets some food with no one competing to steal it. That was how I got mine to eat different foods, and without having it stolen by all the aggressive, active, fast fish. So I would think that. Man, a cup of hot coffee in the second hour? This is weird. But I wouldn't rehome it, and putting it in a small tank by itself I don't think is a solution either. It just depends how long your upgrade takes, how you're going to do that transition. But if you're doing a tank transfer and you're moving the tank out of the way, you drain everything out, you put all the fish in a barrel, you put all the rock in another barrel, you rip the tank out, your friend helps you put the new tank in place, you add the sand, you add the rock, you put in your fish, you put in your corals, you get the power heads going, and you start the filtration. And then like 2 days later, you just start dumping in pods left and right. I think that your mandarin will probably be okay in that scenario. Oh, speaking of Coral Magazine, thank you, Daryl, for mentioning that. He says, I just subscribed. Congratulations. That's a great choice you made. New products in the shop. This just arrived yesterday. I get 6 issues of this magazine every 2 months. So I put them up for sale on the website. They're $8 each. I recommend you buy it with some other things you're buying, so shipping makes sense. But if you buy it by itself, I can ship this, I think, for $5. This is the Legacy Fishes issue. This is an Anthias, by the way. I looked it up. And I literally unwrapped it to show you guys. So these are in stock now. I have a couple of issues of the, I think it was a starfish issue, talking about the invertebrates, and then one about ICP testing. I still have 2 issues left. I thought those would sell instantly. I still have them. So this is in stock. I'll get it on the website. And then another new thing that's on the website, well, will be on the website. If you need them now, just let me know. I got some Salifert test kits. So I have the Nitrate test kit in stock now. I have the Phosphate test kit in stock. And I have the Calcium test kit in stock. Those are the ones that I was able to get at this time. I will be adding the other 2, which would be magnesium and alkalinity, but they just didn't have any at this time. So if you're not wanting to use Elos, which I've been selling for a long time, I'm going to start carrying some Salifert. I used to use Salifert, so it's a good test. I just like Elos. And then this is brand new. I haven't even used it myself yet, but I'm going to. So this right here is a Co2 Scrubber Media. And I thought, people use that stuff. They want to make their tank better. I said, I'm going to get some. I'm going to try it out. I'll just make something to run this through and see if it affects the pH of my tank at all. But so I got a few bags of this. This is a 1 kilogram bag, and it's $12. So if you're needing CO2 absorbing media, I will have it for a few of you, and then I'll have none. So those are some new items in the shop. And since I mentioned the shop, I guess I should put this on the screen. So MilosReef.com is where I do all my business. I have about 200 products on the website that I sell. These are usually things I use myself. And so that way I can explain them to you, and I believe in them because I've used them and I'm happy with them. And, so when you guys buy from me, you're helping support this channel, you're helping support me, and you're helping feed Spock. And she appreciates every meal she gets. So if you want to buy things from MilosReef.com, that is this way, feel free to go there. The new website is in development. I've been in constant contact. I hope you guys like the new version. It should be interesting. I'm hoping it'll be even easier to shop from because it's a better e-commerce. One of the things that I'm asking them to do is, I'm going to leave that right there. We're looking into adding things like Apple Pay and whatever Google Wallet or whatever Google Pay is, get those installed as well. Hoping to create a better shipping module because I know the website currently charges a lot in shipping because it always charges FedEx Ground. And then I ship it, if I can ship it, because it's light. If I can ship it UPS, then I will go ahead and refund you the difference. And I do a lot of refunds so that you guys don't have to overpay in shipping because I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I'm just trying to keep it fair. So we got to pay for shipping somehow, but if I have a cheaper rate, then you will get a partial refund. And out of all the customers I've had this year, only one package didn't get to the customer, and that one is right now being, I have a case to get it back so we can get that to the customer. So we've had a good run so far, with shipping. So thank you for your business, guys. I really do appreciate it. Let's see. Jamie says, after dosing, how long should you leave the tank before you retest the water to get an accurate reading of the tank? Myself, it just depends on what I'm adding, but I kind of like to just test the next day. I'm not looking for instant results necessarily. I tend to be, just one second here, I'm sorry. I'm a pretty patient guy. And so most of the time when I'm doing anything, I set it up, I let it run, and I check the results the next day. There are certain things where I'm going to check sooner. Like, for example, if I were to dose my tank with phosphate or X to knock down phosphate, I'm definitely not going to check it an hour later. I would check it the next day. But if I'm dosing alkalinity into my saltwater barrel, I'm going to then test it to see where the number is to see if the water's ready to use. So that one I'm going to test 20 minutes later. So you see, there's the difference. It depends what I'm trying to accomplish. If I was dosing aquapower, I can't even test for it at all. I have no idea what the amino acids are or are not doing. It's more of a, I hope this helps kind of scenario. But if we're dosing magnesium, we're dosing alkalinity, we're dosing calcium, I would give it a good duration, at least a couple of hours to basically equalize. And as soon as that's done, then I would go ahead and I would do a test. But like I said, most of the time, I just check the next day. Poor Lewis says, I'm stuck on the damn dinoflagellates. Any tips? I'm dosing Dino X, and I'm using waste away, and I'm using a blackout. Okay, so the blackout, good idea. I don't know that using Dino X and waste away is a good idea, but I don't know that it's a bad idea. I do know Dino X is a treatment for dinoflagellates. It's designed for it by Fauna Marin, and it is a 3-week process. So you'll have to let us know what happens. If I was you, and I'm not, but if I was you, I would be siphoning out all the ugly I can get out of my tank. And unfortunately, I'd be replacing that lost water with salt water. And that's part of the problem, because usually when you add more salt water to the tank, clean, nice water, oftentimes that can fuel the dinoflagellates. That's why we're told don't do water changes. Certain things that have worked in the past that have also helped fight dinos is to raise the pH to 8.5 and keep it there, which is really hard to do. And somebody a few years ago came up with a premise that dosing peroxide, but you're already dosing 2 things now. So I don't think adding something else. I think I would rather siphon out. Maybe what you could do is siphon out the uglies into a filter sock that's down in your sump, so you're not losing any water quality, but you're removing some of the mass. And you take that dirty, disgusting sock out of the system, rinse it out, get it ready for another chance. Maybe you can kind of remove some of it without fueling more growth that way. I mean, that would probably be my approach. So, Jamie, I'm using you a lot because you're chatting a lot today. And he says, all my test kits are in a drawer, but I never forget them. I have a system, I call it the learn and test method. Number 1, watch Mark on Saturday. Number 2, test your water while watching Mark. Number 3, repeat next Saturday. That's great. Let's see. Tim says, I was replacing my RODI filters and I wanted to know if the 1 micron will have the most gunk compared to the others like the 5 micron. should they all be showing a lot of gunk? A 1 micron filter, oh, that is so small. I don't even sell that. I sell the 5. The 1 micron filter is so fine that it traps anything greater than 1 micron, right? And it just coats that filter so much that it actually can reduce the pressure of the amount of water getting to the next one and the next one and the membrane. So I don't actually recommend a 1 micron. I don't recommend that at all. I recommend 555 membrane. And your first filter is designed to catch anything big. That'd be sediment, rust, I don't know what else. Just it's capturing the big stuff in the water column. And if the sediment filter gets clogged up, you need to replace it. I had a customer call me up 2 days ago and said my first filter is really, really brown. I said, you need to replace it. Just get it out of there and put a new one in. Fortunately, it's the cheapest filter of the set. It's $5. And if you had to replace that one filter every month, so be it. Some people live in an area where their filter turns brown, rusty brown, or muddy brown. I mean, or almost, well, I said rusty, but like rust, crazy. It's like hideous. And it should never look like that. And it just happens because where they live or they're on a well, whatever it is, there's a lot of stuff in the water. And those have to replace very frequently because, like I said, the carbons can do their job, but the membrane is being starved of water pressure because the first filter is so clogged up. So they just have to replace the sediment more frequently than the rest of us. Myself, where I live, my sediment filter gets a slight hint of beige after 6 months. It doesn't have any of those problems that some others encounter. And so when I see people say, yeah, I finally changed my filters, and they show a picture, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe you waited that long. So yeah, I don't recommend the 1 micron. I just don't think it's necessary. I think if anything, it could be detrimental. So I would suggest that you just use 5 microns all the way across. But you will not see anything on the other filters because the first filter is doing all the work of catching the big stuff. Hello, Hunter. Let's see. Macy's Daddy says, at what point would you add anemones, particularly bubble tip anemones? I like to recommend people wait 9 months. I've been doing that for a long time. I know it can be done sooner. I know people have done it sooner, but I recommend 9 months because, like I said, I like the tank to be mature. I like you to be mature with the tank. I feel like the anemone will have a better chance for success when the tank's been going for a while. And I know the counter argument. People are like, well, if you put it in early, it'll find a spot, and then you can put all your other corals everywhere else and know they won't be killed by the anemone. That's true, but there's also a chance because it's new in the tank and you're making changes over the months, it may decide to wander and it might wander right into a powerhead and die. So I'd rather you and the tank become equally mature over time and then introduce it when it's time to a spot, and hopefully it'll like the spot you pick. It may not. It may even go. I had one where it was like, I want you right here, and I put him there. And my friend Evan, he even took he put food in its mouth instantly, so he would trick into thinking, oh, that's a great spot. This spot gets me food. And I was like, kind of like that idea, but I don't know if that's really true. But I put the anemone in the tank. I tried the food trick. And the darn thing traveled all the way around the tank, and I kept checking on the tank, and it was here, and it was here, and it was here, and it was up there, and it was down here. And then it ended up exactly where I put it and decided to live there. I was like, yes, I win. But that doesn't always work to your favor. Sometimes they wander around a little bit. Chris says, Asterina starfish. I have quite a lot of my 3-year-old reef. Should I leave them or get a harlequin shrimp to remove them? Do you have a problem in your tank that you're blaming the Asterinas for? Because if you don't, then just leave them. My tank is filled with Asterinas, and I see hundreds on the walls at night, and I just don't care. I leave them there. Other people are like, oh, they're evil, they got to go. Christopher says, should I be concerned about tiny yellow sponges growing under my rockwork? No, not at all. Those are good things. Sponges are filter feeders, and a lot of times you'll see sponge growing in shaded areas. And so as you inspect your rockwork and you look in those caves, you'll see white, you'll see yellow. You might get lucky and see blue occasionally. There's also orange and red. There's so many different kinds of sponges, and it's nice to get one for free instead of having to buy and plant one, because usually the ones we buy don't survive. I don't actually recommend buying sponges unless you have a system where you're really heavily feeding it liquid foods, because they are massive filter feeders. But I have tons of sponge growing in my tank, and I don't remove it intentionally. I leave it there until it absolutely has to, for some reason, had to be removed. Like I remove the rock, or I flip the rock over and there was just a need. But no, I leave it. And if it grows in my refugium, that's fine down there too. K. Miller says, can a drastic change in salinity cause SPS to die? Like 1.0 to 6 down to 1.018. Yes, absolutely. SPS is small polyp stony, but we like to say it represents stability, promotes success. So we want to definitely keep that salinity where it belongs. How did your number drop so much? Did something go wrong and your RO system put too much water in the tank? Did your protein skimmer overflow and your top off never turned off? Did you put in RO water instead of salt water during a water change? That's a big, big change. And yeah, that would definitely kill SPS corals. Sorry to hear that happened to you. Peter says, I started a new nano tank. It's 10 gallons, and I decided not to use a protein skimmer. I do a 50% water change each week, and the tank is lightly stocked. So far, it's stable. Any thoughts? Keep up the good work. You're doing a great job. No, that sounds great. For little nano tanks, the water change is the simplest solution, and a lot of times nano tanks don't have room for the equipment. So, no, I think that's perfectly acceptable, and I think you should just keep it up and enjoy what you've got going on. It sounds like you've got it really well planned so far. Pickleboy says, love your group on Facebook. And I'm a member of your group, and I'm glad I found you guys. I don't understand the part in the middle. But yeah, no, we have a great group on Facebook. It's Club Milos Reef. We've been going now almost 2 years. This is our 23rd month. I just approved like another 100 people to the group last night. And the group is designed to answer your questions, help you identify things, show off what you got growing in your system, show us your gear, show us your ideas. We love that kind of stuff. Seriously, I do. And we interact every single day. So I like to see what's going on. If you want to tag me in your post, you can in that group. You can tag Milos Reef, you can tag Mark Levinson. Either way, I'll find out. And the group is designed to be helpful and not to berate or put people down. I have to say this because I need everyone to understand. The group was designed to be a friendly environment with no attacking. And I said and there's a rules video that you should watch when you're in the group. If you haven't seen the rules video yet, it's about 5 minutes long, and I go over everything. And why is it a video instead of a list? Because no one reads the list anyway, but they'll watch a video. So I did a rules video 2 years ago, and I explain all the rules of the group. It's not selling in that group. It's really education and sharing and asking questions and not feeling embarrassed to ask that question. I feel like we should be able to ask questions and learn without being put down. And so we don't allow anyone to be bullied. And that's why the group so far is doing really well. But I said a long time ago, if we end up with a group that's full of bullying people, I'll just close it down. I'm not going to allow it to exist. I mean, we have enough problems on this planet. I'm not going to let my group be another problem area. So I hope that you like the group and you want to be a member. There are 3 questions you need to answer when you're applying. And normally if people don't even answer those, I just don't even approve them because you couldn't even take the time to answer 3 questions. Why do I think you're going to follow any rules? So feel free to find us. We're facebook.com/groups/Milos Reef. Kevin says, do you know how long each viewer watches your live streams on average amount of time? Does your software tell you? I'm just curious. It's hard to tell. And I wish someone else was doing the stream so I could be on the back end studying what's happening inside YouTube, because I feel like there's probably some tools I'm totally unaware of because I'm inside some streaming software called eCam Live. And that software takes over my screen, and it's where everything's happening. You know, it controls things and scenes, and there's sound effects. Like, I never use this. This is probably going to be loud. My sound effects on? Oh, I got them muted. Hang on. Let me turn this down, but I'll do a sound effect. Yay! Okay. There's all kinds of controls in here, but I don't see what YouTube shows. And when you go into YouTube Analytics, it doesn't always show how long they watch something. I mean, it does show some stuff, and it shows how it tapers off, which is totally normal. People are interested at the beginning, and then they get bored, and they go do something else. But that doesn't tell you that they came back later because they hit pause to hear the rest. But I do have a lot of people tell me, I listen to the whole thing. I listen to it while I drive my car. I listen to it while I'm cleaning at my house. I go to bed listening to you. I mean, I've heard a lot of different variations of that. And so I know the streams are long. I realize that our time can be short, but I have a lot to say, and I can't do it quickly. I mean, I could, but this has been a really nice avenue, and like I said, we've done it over 100 times, and people keep coming back. And I noticed the worst stream, you know, if you're going to talk on how many people viewed it, out of all the streams done, the least amount of views was 1,875 people. So almost 2,000 people watched the least interesting stream. But there's probably 20 of those streams where it was over 20,000 people watched. And there's one that's 50,000, which I was like, wow, I didn't expect that. So we've got some really good ones. Some are going to be duds. It's sort of like The Tonight Show. Remember Jay Leno? He was telling us a story because he took over for... I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. He took over from that guy, and that guy, he was saying, I'm really nervous about taking over The Tonight Show. And the other guy that had been doing it for so long said, look, you do the show 5 days a week, and not every one of them is going to be a winner. You're going to have some good ones, and you're going to have some bad ones. You just keep doing them. And so Jay Leno took that to heart, and he just did his thing. And he had some great episodes, and he had some that weren't so great. And I'm sure it's the exact same thing for everything we do. Just like any TV show we watch, we have some favorite episodes and some that aren't. And some of these streams are great, some are not so great. But I love that you guys are willing to tune in right now. 270 people are here. And you know, I'm answering your questions one-on-one. I think it's pretty great. Yorkshire Reefer says, I have a new 160-gallon tank nearly ready for fish. I have a pair of clownfish that are going in, but I'd like to add at least another pair. How would you advise I do this? I really wouldn't advise you do it at all. I wouldn't, because the two will probably bully the other ones that are new. And I know you're moving them into the 160, so it's technically they're all going in at the same time, but invariably the one pair will chase off the other one. And I say that from a guy who's seen it repeatedly in many different size tanks, from little tanks to big ones, including an 800-gallon reef that had 4 pairs of clowns. And in 800 gallons of water, it came down to 1 pair ended up being in there, and all the other pairs had to be removed. Just couldn't work. So like in that one system, you had the pair in the reef, and then there was a huge refugium in the sump I built, and they made that a anemone and clownfish spot for another pair. And then they had another tank for another pair, because it just couldn't do it. They just wouldn't tolerate each other. It's just difficult, unfortunately. Robert says, which HANA phosphate checker do you recommend? Well, everyone swears by the ultra-low nutrient, ULS, but I would recommend the regular one. You know, the not ultra-low, because invariably we're going to have some phosphate in the water, and we want to be able to read it. And if you have one that's targeted so way down to the end of the scale that you can't even measure what's happening up high, I mean, that's how I understand it. When I did have one, I used it briefly. I don't know, I used it I used it 15 times. I just didn't like doing it. It was too cumbersome. The HANA checker, I mean, okay, so some people are colorblind and they can't see the color change, so they love the digital display. Some people love the digital display because it's a number, so that must be the truth compared to a colored vial, which is probably lying to you. It's a weird thing. We just believe things when we see it digital. You know, if it's in writing, it must be true, right? So I was going to say, I've got this test kit here. This is the phosphate test kit from Elos. You take a vial, it's a glass vial, it's not in here because I have it over there, and you put in 10 milliliters of water, and you put 2 drops of this, 2 drops of this, shake it 30 seconds, done. That's the easiest test kit ever. Now, another one that's very, very easy, unless things have changed, is the Saliford phosphate test kit. I haven't used this in 10 years, but I'm assuming it's the same. Again, this test kit, so here, I'll just show you a brand new one. So This is the color card, color chroma, and you've got 2 items, powder and liquid and powder. And you've got your beaker and you've got your syringe. Odds are you need, well, the instructions are right here in front of me. Let me take a look really quick. Yep. You need 10 milliliters of water, so you're going to fill this beaker about halfway. You're going to put in 4 drops, shake it for 10 seconds, put in 1 scoop. Hey, there's no scoop. All right, well, needs a scoop. I guess I'm not selling that kit. You take, so anyway, 4 drops, goes in the beaker, 1 scoop, shake it, and there's your result. It's that simple. This one's 2 drops, shake. I mean, I find this to be super easy. When I did the Hannah checker, I had to put in the vial, fill it up with water, up to the line. I had to wipe off all fingerprints. I had to face it correctly in front of me, lower down in, close the lid, hit the button, let it do its thing. Then I had to open it up. I had exactly 3 minutes to cut open a pouch, pour in the powder, shake it up, make sure there was no bubbles in the vial, wipe down any fingerprints, put it back facing me, close the lid, hit the button, wait for it to do its thing. That seemed more cumbersome to me, but other people seem to love it. I mean, so many people like that thing, and they have it. I bought mine. I just don't use it. So I didn't love it. And, I'm not trying to go down on Hannah, because Hannah has a great one for alkalinity that's super easy to measure with. But I just found it was a little too difficult. Now, I've had people say they didn't like the little packets, because basically everyone seems to agree if you're going to do it, you should cut open the top of the packet before you even start so it's ready to go. And you got to like fold it, pinch it so it's like a funnel so you can pour it into the little tiny beaker. So I just prefer to do the ELOS test kit because it's so simple. So that's what I recommend, and that's why it's available on my website. Can't believe there's no scoop in here. But the funny thing is, I have so much stuff, I probably have the scoop. I'll show you guys something you've never seen before. Since you've been with me this far into the stream, you get a little bit more extra. So let me move this out of the way. So this is my bin with all my testing stuff. I'm going to take all these things out because I want to show you what's under them. Like I said, no one's ever seen this before. So now all the test kits are out of there, but yet this bin's still got a lot of stuff in it. Here's an extra instruction card in case I get one wet for the calcium test. Here's an extra magnesium test card, just because it's in good shape. And then in here, I have so many plungers and vials that have never had a drop of water in them because I took good care of them and I just didn't need to replace it. See, I told you. Here's a scoop that could be used. But Salvador has a blue scoop with like a funny thing you put on the end of your finger. And I might have one of those in my other bin. But there's just so many of these syringes in here and vials that if I drop one and break it, I have a backup, so to speak. I just don't like to waste anything. I also have extra thermometers. I always tell you guys, have plenty of thermometers on hand. These things are like $3. I always buy them. And then I even have syringes for when you have to kill Aptasia with a needle on the end. So this is this is my secret stash under my test kits nobody knows about till now. Now 5,000 of you know. And I still use my magnetic stirrer to do my water test because it's so much easier than shaking a vial. Love it. All right, let's go to another question. Then we're going to be wrapping this up pretty soon. Tim says, when you calibrate your Trident and it tells you to enter the numbers from the bottle, suppose it says 8 to 10, all you can enter is the block, enter in the block is the bottom number, right? I don't know. I haven't calibrated mine in a while. I did exactly what it said on the bottle. The bottle had markings of 3 different things, and I remember entering those, and then you do your test, and it should give you those exact same numbers when it's done. I'm sorry, Tim, I don't recall. It's been too long since I've actually done mine. I've been bad about calibrating that one. Mark Waller says, is it better to put phosphate Rex in a filter sock first or into the tank first? If you put it into the filter sock, there's only a little bit of water in that sock. All the water is everywhere, but the sock has a very contained amount. So I don't really see the benefit of dripping it into the sock. It's actually designed to be dripped right into your tank, and then as your tank drains into the sock will then remove the flocculant from the water as quickly as it possibly can. Ideally, you want to use a very fine micron sock. The 10 micron is available on my website. It's something that Blue Life made in conjunction to go with their product, Phosphate RX. And I sell those in the 4-inch diameter sock and the 7-inch diameter sock. I even have some 5 micron filter socks now because that's what they had in stock. They didn't have any 10s. So I've got some that are even finer if you like 7-inch socks in your sump. But I just dosed my tank twice this week with Phosphate RX and got the phosphates all the way down to 0.05, which is super nice and low. I was really happy with that. But then yesterday, my auto feeder, which you can see right, point my finger to it, right? I'm trying to get my finger to it exactly. That right there is my Eheim auto feeder that last night decided to just turn and turn and turn and never stop. And I saw the confetti hitting the water, and I was like, come on. And I could hear it like one more rotation, like, oh my God, it's not gonna stop. And so I took it off the tank immediately, and I ran Phosphate RX last night because it was gonna make my phosphates go up again that I just got down. And I didn't run any kind of filter sock in that, because for 10 years, or for 9 years, I didn't even have a filter sock option. That didn't exist at that time. So I just put it in the system and let the protein skimmer remove it. But if you want to use a filter sock to trap it more quickly, that's what they're designed for. It helps clear the water clarity so that way, or to improve water clarity rapidly, which is great for like public aquariums where people are going to see the tank all day. So no, I don't drip into the sock. I like to drip into the skimmer section, and that way it then goes to the return zone, goes up in the tank, and then drains back down. And if there was a sock, it would go into a sock, but I don't have any socks in my sump right now. Reef Bum says, how has the virus been affecting you? I want a jellyfish tank, but it seems like half the Chinese companies that once existed aren't operating currently. That's a lot of companies no matter what, not even Chinese, but all kinds of companies are not operating currently because of this. For me, business has been really brisk. There's been a lot of people buying things, but one of my other concerns, I didn't mention this earlier, one of my other concerns was that the suppliers were going to dry up. You know, everyone's like, oh, I want this, I want that, I want that, and we're selling it, that's great. But when I can't get what you're trying to buy, that's a problem. And like Ecotech, everyone wanted Radions. They came out with a brand new Radion, COVID-19 happened, and then there was like this massive wait to get their lights. And because they had no one there to build them, because COVID-19 shut down their business. And then they finally opened up enough to have 20% of their staff working instead of 100%. And they could only make so many lights per day. And so there's an example. They make lights, I sell lights, I can't sell their light because they can't make them fast enough. My supply has dried up, so to speak. And that was a concern. I thought, well, it's great if you're buying things. It's nice that I can work from home and continue to be, you know, employed when so many people are unemployed. But I was concerned about what would happen when I can't get any more Apexes or Radions or Phosphate RX or whatever. You know, I mean, a lot of the aquarium companies continued. They stayed open. A lot of fish stores continued and did well. A lot of businesses in this industry have done really well this first 6 months. But I'm, like I said, you know, earlier in the stream, I'm a little worried about what's going to happen for the next 6. I have this feeling it's going to get a lot more difficult. And regarding getting a specific tank like the jellyfish tank, odds are someone is making them out there. And, you know, doing a little digging, you may be able to find something now, or you might be able to DIY your own. It might be a good time to do it. You're stuck at home anyway. You can get some stuff and you can make one, and you could, then you have to find the jellyfish though. That could be a challenge as well. Tim says, are you getting a good bit of algae in the algae turf scrubber? Have the nitrates come down? I haven't tested nitrates yet today, so I need to find out. But the algae has not been doing really well in the scrubber. It's been like some algae and some mud, some cyano. It's just kind of gross. I scrape it off. I grab a handful to take a picture, and it looks like mush. It looks like I pulled it out of the garbage disposal. I'm like, I want it to look like green hair algae that's just like a beautiful, like I just mowed my grass. That's what I want it to look like. It's not doing that yet. I don't know why. And my refugium is filled with macroalgae, which you can kind of make it out there in the video. It's I was expecting that to die back significantly and just dwindle away. And it could be that it's out competing the turf scrubber. That's a possibility. I asked Jason, I said, any chance my algae My refugium is winning? And he says, yes, it is possible. And then, of course, he sends me a picture of his beautiful algae come off his scrubber. I'm like, oh, I hate you, because I want mine to do what his is doing. But his tank doesn't have a refugium. So like I said, it could be a battle of wills between these two devices. Chris says, I just got the citric acid powder and I can't find the ratio for mixing to clean my pumps. Do you know what it would be about? I think it was a half a cup per gallon when I was digging into it. And I feel like that's right. I'm not 100% sure. You could go as much as a cup. But I think a half a cup per gallon would do it. And I would take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it halfway with water, put in like a cup and a half of the stuff, stir it up, and then I put things in there to clean. And I'm all out. I actually need to buy more. And the last time I bought from Amazon. And I think I bought like, I don't know, a 5-pound bag. I should have got like the 50-pound bag. I should have known. But I hadn't used it before, so it was my first time. So I need to buy like a big batch because I'd like to clean all my Vortex and I'd like to use that. So I just need to like make the time to get on Amazon and place another order. Someone asked, that guy asked me, how am I doing with the virus? I'm trying to avoid everything. I'm trying to stay out of stores. I just don't want to go out in public. I wear a mask all the time. Tulio Jones says, I'm starting a new display tank. It's a 45-gallon, but it's really tall compared to most. What would be the best light value, that I could do at that depth? It's a small tank. See, so many of the lights that are going to do the depth you need nicely are designed to be wide. It's a wider light. Even like the XR15, the Radion. It's designed for a 2-foot by 2-foot area. I doubt your 45 is even that big. Is it a 45 hex? Did you say hex? No, you just said 45. But yeah, it could be a taller tank, but odds are most of the Reef LED fixtures will do you a good job, even to that depth. It's not like you're doing over a 180-gallon or tank or a 240 where they're taller and taller, or like mine. Mine's 30 inches tall. That Anemone cube, it's 24 inches tall and it's got a Radion over it. So how tall is your 45, I guess, is what we need to know. But if it's 20, 22, 23 inches tall, I'd say most of the LED lights that you see for sale for aquariums probably would work out. You just don't want the weak ones. There's certain LED lights that are sold, and I'm not calling them out, I'm just making an example. Marineland makes one that it seems more like it's for decor than to grow anything. It's more like so you can see your goldfish than it is to grow green star polyps, for example, something easy. They're just really, really dim. But there's other lights out there that have some serious punch to them. Even the Kessel, oh, you know what? Okay, I thought of one. I have a picture of one. I have a physical one I can show you. This is the Kessel 360X with a Kessel arm. Actually says the word Kessel right on it right there. And it has a Wi-Fi dongle. And it even has a thing to focus the light tighter so it's not spreading wide and holds on magnetically. And this light right here, it's, what is that? The size of, it's probably about, what is that, 4 inches in diameter? Maybe 5. And I say 4. And this right here would be great over a narrow, tall tank to shine the light down deeply. So maybe the Kessel 360X would be a good choice for you. I told you I have a lot of stuff over here. George says, I would like to know, should I buy the Hanna Nitrate or the Nitrite Checker? Which is more important? Depends where you are in the stage of the hobby. How old is your tank? What are you measuring? Are you measuring nitrite on a regular basis? Are you still cycling a tank? What's going on? I need more information to answer that question. Because nitrite is something we only test during the cycle and then we never test it again. And I know nitrate is coming out, but I don't think it's available yet. I think it's almost ready. Brian says, I just bought overflows from you for my 210 gallon. They came out great. Now the tank is leaking from the bottom seam. Oh. Is it worth trying to find someone to tear down and rebuild the tank? Redoing the seal didn't help. That sucks. Well, I mean, if the tank isn't scratched, then I'd say yes, it's worth it to redo it. But you're talking about a complete rebuild of the tank. And that's where I had a guy here in the local area When my 280 leaked and it had to be rebuilt, I told the this guy in my area, he'd been making beautiful tanks. I said, would you be willing to rebuild my 280? And he said, Mark, if you will take that tank completely apart, so I have a pile of brand new pieces of glass. He says, I will glue it back together for you. And you'll never have that. And he said, I would even recommend we replace the front panel with a brand new piece of Starfire glass so you have no scratches, because that tank was 6 years old. And I thought, man, that sounds fantastic. And so my plan was to get like guitar strings and put like wooden handle and just cut through the silicone and then razor blade it off, and then, I don't know, use acetone or whatever to remove every trace of sediment or dirt or oil, so it was pristine glass, and then just give him this pile of glass and say, build me a tank. And he was going to get me the piece of Starfire for the front for like $500 or $600 or something, and then I was going to have a nice new tank. But then, I thought, or I could get a new tank and not keep living with this 280, and that's what ended up happening. But it is possible to rebuild a tank and completely brand new silicone, every single bit of it, not just fill in silicone in the seam like caulk, but like literally where the two pieces of glass touch. That would be a brand new seam. That can be done. So it just comes down to the amount of effort involved to take apart and clean your tank, your pieces, and get someone willing to do it. And is it, worth it to pay them all this money? But I mean, you just bought the overflow boxes, you're kind of committed. I'm sorry that happened, man. That's bad news. All right, we're coming up on 2 hours. I'm going to be wrapping this up here shortly. We have just a few more questions, I think. Or I'm just going to have to stop. Ira says, what are your thoughts on the Trident to maintain consistency in 2-part dosing? Any inconsistency I need to be aware of? I'm about to hook one up. Well, first I would hook it up as a monitor, and I would let it measure your tank and just watch the numbers and see how it does while whatever you're using now for dosing 2-part continues. Whether you're doing it or it's a dosing pump or it's the dose, whatever you're doing now, I would just let it do it and let this thing tell you what's happening, like looking at the thermometer on the wall to tell you that your tank is a certain temperature. That's what I would do. Then if you want, there's a task to activate Trident controlled dosing, and it can control the dosing, and it can actually turn things on and off based on the need of the tank and send you notifications. But I wouldn't do it when you're first setting it up. I always feel like you need to learn how the machine works for a while before you let it control things you're doing on your tank. Because if there's a problem and you're assuming, well, the machine can't be the problem, it could be doing things you didn't expect because you're not familiar enough with it. So that's my recommendation. I wouldn't do it yet. I would use it as a monitor initially. Odile says, which Prodibio products do you use? I found them on your website. I don't know which one to use once a month like you've talked about. Okay, so I use the 4 products, which is Bioptim, Biodigest, Stronti Plus, and IOD Plus. And I put those in every 15 days. And today is the 4th, which means I'm doing it tomorrow. I always do it on the 5th and on the 20th of every month. And I put in 1 pro vial of each because those are rated 250 to 500 gallons. And my system is 450. And I've been doing that for the last 9 years. If your tank is smaller, you're probably going to use standard size vials, which are 1 vial per 50 gallons. So if you, like for example, someone this week wanted to order some for his 180 gallon tank, I basically told him to dose for 150 gallons. And so I sent him out a bunch of the different ones he asked for. I gave him the full list and he goes, well, I want to buy this, this, and this. Next week I'll buy that and that. So if you wanted to buy, I have a Bio Reef kit. That's one kit that has all the stuff in it, like all 6 things are in one kit. But you can only do it 5 times. But that's 5 doses 15 days apart. So that's 2.5 months in one kit. Pretty good. If you wanted bulk of those little 50-gallon vials, I have 30 vial packs. I have 12 vial packs. I mean, there's a lot of choices in there. And I try to get enough of everything to keep up with demand. It's kind of tricky. I'm kind of trying to, I've done so good, pretty, I've done so far so good, but it's been a little tricky, and sometimes I'd have to make them wait a little bit while I got some more in really quick because I was lacking one thing. So I'd say that you need to know what size tank you're working with. Obviously, you'd have to tell me that. I can definitely discuss it with you and help you figure out exactly what you need. But I've got a few different variations. Like BioClean is half Prodibio Bioptim and half Prodibio Biodigest in the same package. And so I have a ton of BioClean, for example, and you might want to go that route. So there you go. Vivek says, I have a question from India. How do you remove bristleworms from a 4-year-old tank? Or should I let it be in the tank? What are the advantages or disadvantages of it? I would say to just use tweezers and remove the biggest offenders, the ones that bother you the most. I don't usually consider them to be a problem in the tank, but if you have something that's 12 inches, 18 inches in your tank, or it's really thick, you're looking at it, you're like, wow, that's got to go, then I would just remove that with some forceps. And when I say tweezers, I'm always talking about these things right here. So these are rubber tipped, but they also have ones that are just plain metal. And once you're done, just rinse it so it doesn't get rusty. I've had this a long time. It's held up pretty well. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty clean. And that way you don't get stung by the bristles. But I should mention that bristleworms are part of the cleanup crew also. They eat and consume waste and decay, and they are first to get there to remove things that have died. So they're not really a bad thing, but like I said, the biggest ones, they may become so big and so hungry that they start consuming things you care about because they can't get adequate food from the dust in the sand bed. So that's why I'm saying, I'd yank out the giant ones. All right. I think I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. I'm kind of tired. Like I said, my back does only handle so much these days. I'll handle one more massive topic here. Smoking Reefer says, I've got a new tank coming next week, 100 gallons to 3... New tank coming. I guess he's going from 100 gallon to a 300 gallon. Can you tell me the process you would do to transfer everything, i.e. 1, fill with water, 2, transfer rock, 3, transfer media and tanks? Yeah, he's going from 100 gallon to a 300 gallon. The biggest question is it going where the 100 gallon is now? If it's in the way of the new tank, that definitely adds to your complexity of the tank. But if you're putting the new tank in a new spot and you can keep the existing tank running, then you could actually get the new tank running with minimal equipment and get water going through it, possibly get it cycled, just get it all happy and going, and then move. But if it has to go where the tank is, or if you're like, look, I'm only having one tank run at a time and you have to do a breakdown, I would say get some helpers, number one. Get some people to help you. Family members, a friend, whatever. And you're going to drain the water out of the tank into a couple of very clean or, usually I would say brand new trash cans, because we want to drain water out of the tank into a clean environment in case we need that water. We're going to transfer the rock out of the tank into that water. The other trash can that has water is going to have fish in it. Any corals that are on rocks are going to be on the top of the pile of rocks in the barrel underwater. You're trying to keep everything submerged with oxygen and with flow and possibly with a heater while you're busy yanking the old tank out, cutting the plumbing out, putting the new stand in place, putting the new tank up, hooking up plumbing. And then you've got the sand to contend with. Are you going to wash it out? Are you putting in all new sand? And then you're going to have to move in some livestock. You're doing a tank transfer. It's basically just systematic. Take it all down, put it all back up. And then you're going to want to make sure all the equipment runs correctly. You're going to be super observant for the first 24 hours. I would probably add some Chem Prime to the tank to lock away ammonia, nitrate, chlorine, chloramine, all the possible things that could be released during all of this transfer. It'll lock up ammonia, which is important as well. And it'll be it's totally reef safe, so you don't have to worry. It's 1 capful per 50 gallons, so 6 capfuls for your 300 gallon. And I would have a lot of new salt water on hand ready to go. I don't necessarily think you should use the old water, especially with 100 gallon and you're putting some of it in one barrel for fish and the other one for rock. I don't know how much you'd have left over. And the used water will not help the new tank. There's nothing beneficial in salt water in a tank. There's nothing in it. The water's not carrying some magic bacteria that's going to help the new system suddenly do better. So essentially, you just want to keep everything super stable, because when you get the tank running, you're going to then have to acclimate all your corals and fish into the new tank. So it's kind of it's an all-day thing. It's going to take all day. It's going to be exhausting. 9 to 13 hours easily for this project, I guarantee you. Rob says, what's your email? sales@milosreef.com. Eddie says, I read an article recently about 2 separate quarantine tanks, one for fish and one for corals and cleanup crew. I don't quarantine cleanup crew ever. They are already clean because they clean each other. That's why their shells are bone white. And I don't dip them in anything. I literally put them in the tank and let them do their job. Fish and corals, I've always put them in the same tank. You know, it just depends what usually what it is I'm quarantining a fish, and now the fish is gone, and now I'm quarantining a new frag. And then, I'm done with the frag, and now a new fish came in. Or maybe it's another coral, and it might be 50 corals, and then finally one new fish, because I tend to get lots of corals compared to how many fish I get. But 2 separate ones, it's quarantine. Quarantine is just a place to hold it with some light, flow, heat, water, filtration. Hospital, that's where you need the second tank because you're using medicine. And when you're using medications, they need to be in a system that's not the quarantine tank. Eddie says, based on this, the logical sequence and order, you literally start cycling for the quarantine, then start cycling the display tank. Can you comment on this? Because it sounds extremely precautious and lengthy. Yeah, it's very drawn out. Most people want to set up the tank, and they don't even think about quarantine. I kind of added it as an afterthought when I was discussing this in the beginning of the stream, and I know that a lot of the people watching are not going to set up a quarantine tank. I can't put a number on it, but I could imagine 80% don't quarantine. I can totally believe that, and I don't think someone's going to prove me wrong on that, because so many people don't quarantine. That's why I said at the very least use Safety Stop, because that's a 2-hour bath, and then you're putting them into your tank. And but yeah, if you wanted to cycle both at the same time, you could. You could run a quarantine tank, get it cycling. You can set up a display tank, get it cycling, and then when the tank's ready for livestock, in the meantime, you're quarantining. See, the quarantine tank, it's not as demanding for a cycle. It needs some kind of a cycle, but it's not as demanding because, number one, it's a very small water volume. Number two, you're going to change the water on it every single day. You're going to do a 10% water change daily. So the ammonia won't get it out of control because you're changing the water so frequently. When you feed the fish in the quarantine tank, after 5 minutes, you're supposed to siphon out whatever they didn't eat so it doesn't grow more ammonia in that tank so that the fish gills aren't burned. You have a hang-on-back filter that's filtering the water. You're topping off to make sure salinity is the same. You're changing some water every single day. So it's not quite the cycle that the reef tank needs, which is what this stream is about setting up a reef tank, the timeline of a reef. So, but I did add it as an afterthought because some people do quarantine, and it's a smart thing to do. Luigi says, is there any safe way to keep looking at blue lights? Because it strains my eyes when I look at the tank for longer than 5 minutes, and I get frustrated because I want to look at the tank for a longer period. Could your lights change to white? If they could, I would turn off the blues. Or maybe the problem is you're looking at the tank. Let me go near my tank. You're looking at the tank, but you're standing here and you're seeing the blinding light right in your eyes because there's no shield. So could you put type of canopy around your tank so that you're only looking in the tank? Or is it when you're looking in the tank itself and you see all the blue, it's bothering you? Because that's a whole other thing. But like I said, if you can change the spectrum of the light to not be blue, maybe it'll be easier on your eyes. The other choice is to put on the orange sunglasses to kind of filter out the blue, which could work as well. Blue is usually the preference for the really wild colors, but even then, I mean, I don't stare at my tank like a lava lamp when it's blue. I see it, it's glowing, it's gorgeous, I appreciate it for like 29 seconds and I walk away. So maybe you're just looking at it too long. I don't want you to strain your eyes. So be careful. Maybe some of those things would help. Hey Tim, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate that. I'm gonna spend it all in one place. Is that okay? Oh, Dale, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate that. Oh, there's all these super chats down here. I'm so glad I didn't hang up quite yet. but I need to stop. Chris says, I have an all-in-one 15-gallon tank that's at the 3 to 4 month mark, and the divider wall is black plastic, which has a greenish to brown algae growing on it. Should I remove the algae or let it be? You can do what you like. I prefer to scrape it away. But that black material may be textured to where it's not smooth to where you can scrape it clean. It could be like orange peel, which is so hard to keep clean. And you could just have a cleanup crew that's working on it. Snails will work on it. Urchins will work on it. Hermit crabs may even find their way up the walls and pick at it. By the way, I shot some funny video that I haven't shared because it's kind of pointless. But I had a hermit crab in the middle of the night get out onto the lock line going into the anemone cube. So the water's shooting into that tank, and the hermit crab was right at the hole because he was trying to pick off all the algae that was at the very, very, very tip. And so all the water was hitting his shell and ricocheting up and making this noise. And I'm like, why does my tank sound like it's leaking? And I was thinking, this guy's got the strength of the Hulk to hold on and pick algae off. And he was there for about 5 minutes. So I shot some silly video of it, but I don't know that I'm going to use it for anything. George says, can Arm & Hammer sodium bicarbonate temporarily raise my alkalinity? Yes, you need to bake the Arm & Hammer baking soda in your oven for about 45 minutes to an hour. There's a recipe on my website. Just type in DIY alkalinity or DIY soda ash, I think is what you need to type in Google, and Milo's Reef. And it shows exactly how to do it. You bake it, you then let it cool off, and then you use the Reef chemistry calculator to determine how much you need, and it will definitely raise your alkalinity. If you didn't bake it, then I think it'll depress your pH, and you don't want that to happen. Yorkshire, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Wow. Thank you very much for that super chat, Adam. That looks like a lot. I don't know what it is. It's 300 sec. But I appreciate it. Let's see. Hey, I got to the end of the list. Yay. Malcolm's Reef is going to be our final comment for today. Good afternoon, Mark. Happy 4th of July, and give your mama a hug for us. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's really nice of you. Today is Water Test Saturday. Please test your water. I know I talked about all this stuff today, but water testing is part of what we do here. And I do highly encourage you to test your water, see what's going on, make sure your tank is healthy, and then go enjoy the rest of the holiday. I know you're going to do it safely. You're going to stay at home. I hope that you get to see some fireworks. I've been hearing explosions all week. I don't know why we're starting early, but people are doing it. In the meantime, I'm going to go do what I got to do, and I look forward to seeing you guys again in another week. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you guys stay safe and wear your masks. Bye.